mentors. If you're given two jobs, take the one that has the better mentorship relationship. Forget about the money. It doesn't matter. If one will pay you half as much, but you have a better mentor, take that one, always. The type of people who enjoy failing over and over. And it hurts.
Yeah, it's not like just failing. Like
all for that one joy of landing the trick. Like if you watch skaters skate, you'll notice they don't make the trick most of the time.
That's terrible.
So those people are comfortable with failure. Well, and you might treat it as a technical problem where really it's a retail problem. The failure case would be, the IT team goes away and they make you a data platform and they deliver it to you and you have no idea what to do with it. What we did was the opposite. We got the retail teams together and we said, imagine that you have access to everything you might want to know about your customers. What would you do with it?
We are the average of the people we hang out with. I am Matthieu Stefani, serial entrepreneur and co-founder of Cosa Vostra, a tech and creative consulting agency. With Génération Do-It-Yourself, I offer you talks with entrepreneurs, sportsmen or artists who will literally make our average explode. I usually post in French, but I record in English from time to time, as for this episode you're about to listen. And I'd love to get your feedback. Oh, and before you start, please reach out if you need to grow in France and in Europe. At Cosa Vostra, we have a 100-plus team of amazing consultants, designers or developers based in Paris, London, and much more locations to help you grow your business. Talk to you soon. Enjoy the episode. I was saying I checked where you were from exactly. It's closer to Chicago than Detroit, isn't it?
Correct. Yeah, you're about 4 hours, I think, maybe 5 from Detroit, but about 3.5 hours from Chicago.
It's more or less the same.
You're actually closer to Chicago than Indianapolis.
Is it better to go to Detroit or to go to Chicago? Were you going to both? Or
I would actually say it's better to go to Ann Arbor.
Okay.
Ann Arbor, which is where University of Michigan is, that city shaped me. When I was growing up, Chicago is where you would go for culture. I saw my first punk rock shows in Chicago. It's where also when you're a kid, you go to the art museum or you go to the zoo. But Ann Arbor was a college town.
Ann Arbor is Detroit, more or less.
It's outside of Detroit, but it's where University of Michigan is. So, a college town has that very specific vibe of most of these people are not from here. And it's a center of liberal culture. I saw my first, real skateboarding there, and that changed my life.
Yeah, it's fun actually how skateboard also shaped your life, right? Because I can see through the interviews you had along your entrepreneur life or business, or if you're always close to skateboard. I mean, that's something you're presented at the skateboarder Ian Rogers.
Yeah, which is a little uncomfortable, but I have to say the older I get, the more I realize how skateboarding shaped who I am. I mean, not only did I meet all of the best people in my life through skateboarding, in some way, shape, or form, there's so many ties back to that. I think there's something about, first of all, there's something about the type of people who enjoy failing over and over and over and over and over and over.
Yeah,
and it hurts.
Yeah, it's not like just failing. Like
all for that one joy of landing the trick. Like if you watch skaters skate, you'll notice they don't make the trick most of the time.
That's terrible.
So those people are comfortable with failure. So it is about like, I try. I finally make it. And then, I keep, and then I keep going to the next thing. I used to have the only vert ramp in Los Angeles in my backyard. So imagine the X Games ramp in a backyard. And I had the only one of those. I actually inherited it. I rented the house just to fix up this ramp that had been left behind by a pro skateboarder.
Now you have a competitor. What's Tony?
The mega ramp. Bob Burnquist. Yeah, well, that's further south. That's the thing. This didn't exist in Los Angeles. But I learned something watching those professionals skate my ramp. And what I learned is that the number one thing they're better at than you is failing. Falling in particular, right? Because when you're skating one of these big ramps,
they know how to fall.
They know how to fall extremely well. Because if you can be 10 feet above the ramp, upside down, decide you're not going to make the trick and then fall to your knees, well, then you win. So what they do the whole game is they drop in. The first side, they do a trick they can land 95% of the time.
Okay.
The next wall, it's an 85% trick. The next wall, it's a 75% trick. And then eventually they fall, right? And they fall on every single run. So what it means to be a professional is your bag of 95% tricks is so big that you can drop in and skate for a few minutes before you fall.
Because you always end up falling at the end.
At the end. And so I think there is definitely a metaphor for life in this, in that, you know, what we're really doing is we're building skills. You know, we're adding skills to our bag. And then, you know, when it's time to work, we get those skills out of our bag and we put them on display, right? And we also always have to go to the point of failure. You know, they say that, you know, that we all kind of, what's the saying? We rise to our own level of incompetence.
Which I don't believe it's that true, but
I definitely do. I feel like I hit that ceiling all the time, but that's what I love. I love hitting that ceiling. It's why I moved here to France, because I felt like, okay, California, done and dusted. I did this. You know, let's go somewhere where there's where I'm going to be really challenged, challenged by culture, challenged by industry, etc. Yeah. But I think that's it. You've always got to. I believe that there's this this band of adaptation. So you can push. In other words, like if I just go run 5 kilometers every day, I'll be trained to run 5 kilometers. I'm not trained to run a marathon, right? I can't just go run a marathon. Even if I've done it for 2 years, I can't just go run a marathon. You actually have to push out of your comfort zone to get any adaptation. Now, if you push too far out of your comfort zone, if I just go out and run 100 miles,
definitely,
that's called injury. So your goal is to get into that band where you're causing yourself enough discomfort to grow, but not so much discomfort that you get injured in whatever that sense might be.
I believe skateboarding is it's quite popular in France, but it's much more popular in the US. If you take another sport that is much more popular in the US, which is golf, there is a lot of comparisons. I don't golf, but I'm closer to skateboard than golf, I would say. But and it's the same. You fail all the time, but there is no fall. It doesn't hurt.
There's no injury.
Does that make a difference?
That's a good question. Maybe that's interesting, because one of the things about skateboarding that is definitely true is that it's also about individualism. You know, there's a great artist, Jeff McFetridge, and he has a drawing, a painting about I think he calls it the solitary arts. And it includes, a pencil, a typewriter, a guitar, a skateboard, and that's something. What I learned from that piece from him is that skateboarding is actually much closer to writing a book than it is playing football, and that hadn't occurred to me before. I felt it as soon as I saw it. I really felt it. So maybe there's something about golf, which is it's like you and the course, you and the ball. That feels similar to skateboarding to me. Maybe the falling is just a side product, because really the mental challenge is probably just as big in skateboarding and in golf. And also there's a part of skateboarding that's really gotten away from me. Watching people skate the mega ramp as an example, it just feels like being a daredevil, not really being what I consider as to me as a skateboarder. I enjoy watching it, but I don't relate to it. I don't look at it and go, "Oh, I can't wait to do that." So
you don't do mega ramps anymore.
I don't. No. I'll be 50 years old at a grandpa this year. Get off the
grandpa at 50. I can't believe this.
Get off the ramp, grandpa. I can't wait to hear that.
So we started this too fast. It's a great introduction. I'm really happy to have you here, Ian. Really, it's been a while since I've been thinking about this, and you know what? Who made this possible? And I want to thank you. It's Olivier Le Garzon-Telec from LVMH. He told me you should definitely talk with Ian. So I wanted to do that before, but I want to
thank you to Olivier. And désolé pour mon français. I wish I could do this in French.
But tu sais quoi? I'm sure you could do it.
It would be painful for your listeners.
Yeah, okay. May I ask you, well, I am asking you actually to introduce yourself, dear Ian.
Sure. My name is Ian Rogers. I was born in 1972 in Goshen, Indiana. As we talked about, I grew up skateboarding, collecting records. I had a kid when I was 17 years old, which was a pretty important part of my life, actually, because it's what got me on a path. I had no path or direction before that.
Was it an accident?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And, but I really, honestly, it was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. And I think that that's a great life lesson. Things are what you make of them, right? And for me, as somebody who had no plans to do anything, I thought I was just going to ride a skateboard and smoke weed for the rest of my life. It put me on a path to do something else, and to say, well, wait, what can I be? What might I be good at? And it also, I think it gave me a very unique life, and for a very long time in my life, I was much better known as Zoe's dad than as Ian Rogers.
It's true. I mean, she's definitely, when we search about you on Google, we can see Zoe everywhere. Yeah.
No, we grew up together.
That's interesting. We grew up together.
We did, and we really got lucky. I studied computer science at Indiana University, built some of the first music tech at university level that looks like what we would use today. I built a system that you could search the card catalog of Indiana University and stream a file from one computer to another across campus, which I think was the first search and stream service of it. The first Spotify back in pre-web days on a Next computer. But then I just started doing early web stuff, and I built. There was this thing before the World Wide Web called Usenet.
May I ask you a question? Sorry. Was it related to the fact that you had a baby that you started programming or doing things like that? Did you that before? Because I could imagine that you were stuck somehow a lot at home, or not?
No, it was actually I had it's all circumstantial. I had a stepfather for a number of years who had studied computer science in the 70s. And in the 80s went back and finished his computer science degree. So we had computers in the house. We had an Apple II Plus, and then I kind of got that as a hand-me-down, and he got an Apple IIe, I think, if that means something to people. He had a little software company called Hoosier Software. He sent me, recently I asked him, I was like, do you have any of the old magazine ads for Hoosier Software? I want to make t-shirts out of them. But that was, in the 80s, so there were computers in the house. Now, my mom and him divorced when I was around 14, and so the computers disappeared from the house, and
even yours,
even mine, and there was just a skateboard ramp in the basement. But I actually think it's the perfect way. It's what made me who I am, right? I went from being this sort of young. I started taking computer programming classes when I was 8, and I was teaching them when I was 10. So then when I got to college, I was actually studying elementary education. But I was helping my friends with their computer programming homework. And I was still in touch with my stepdad. And I just sort of told him as a joke, I was like, Mike, you're not going to believe it, but I can still do this stuff. I'm like helping my friends with their homework. And I was just kind of joking. And he got really serious with me. And he goes, Ian, change your major right now. He's like, listen to me. Change your major to computer science. He's like, you got a kid. You want to make some real money. He's like, this is what you want to do. And I was like, whoa, it hadn't occurred to me at all. I was, oh man, I don't even know what computers are these days. I haven't touched a computer. And, and at that point, it was like 8 years since I'd even touched a computer. I was only 18 years old, or maybe it'd been 5 years, but still, it's just like, I saw these IBM PCs. Like, I don't even know what these are. I never touched one before. And he's like, trust me, listen to me. You want to take this seriously. I was like, okay, I did it. So I listened to him. I went into the guidance counselor's office. I said, oh yeah, I want to change my major to computer science. And she said, oh, that's great, and signed me up and handed me her business card. And she said, email me. And I went, okay, I will. And I had no idea what she meant. I had never heard of email. Like, yeah, I'll email you. I'll do it. Like, I got to get a computer. I have to figure out how it works. I have to figure out what email is. I have to figure out, okay. And there it was. That was, I got a little monochrome 8088 XT and set it up in my closet. My closet was the office, and spent all this time on Usenet. I don't know. I mean, for anyone who doesn't know what Usenet is, I'll just say it's Discord.
Okay.
It's exactly the same thing.
I know the name, but I've never.
A bunch of message boards
Okay.
is all it was, free for all. But the thing you have to remember, and it's like Web3 today, is it was, the pre-web internet was all academics. Basically, everyone was at a university somewhere. So you had a lot of young, passionate people, but generally they were, on the kind of educated and they're on the nerdy side of the scale. I mean, if you were spending all of your time in Usenet in 1991, you were on the nerdy end of the spectrum. I wasn't out at a party, at a frat party getting drunk. I had a baby and I was on Usenet transcribing David Bowie lyrics, right? I'm a nerd.
Were you conscious about that? When you were a nerd, are you? Do you know you're a nerd, or it's just the way that the others see you?
Yeah, I think I've always been. Even to the nerds, I was a weirdo, right? I remember going. I remember going. I was in a programming competition when I was in grad school with two other grad students, and we drove to Illinois or to Iowa together to compete in a programming competition, which we won actually. Not my doing. It was one of the guys is just a straight up genius. But they were like much more typical nerds, and I was keeping us awake by rapping the entirety of Paul's Boutique by the Beastie Boys, on the drive home. So I've never fit in anywhere, and that's okay with me. I don't mind that.
I got the title of this show. It's going to be The Revenge of the Nerd. Because you got this lightning on your shirt. I love your shirt. I told you before. You're going to tell us the story of the shirt, but it's later on. Before you keep going, I'm just going to tell everyone who don't know you, some of them who don't know you, what I want to talk about today. So you're now at Ledger. You're Chief Experience Officer, right?
Correct.
You've been in the past at LVMH, which was kind of to me, random. And very interesting choice, and you'll explain me, and it must be an amazing move, and so many things to learn. And prior to that, you were one of the, I would say the oracle, I don't know, the nerds of the music digital industry for like 20 years or something like this. That was your thing. So the things I wanted to talk to you and understand with you is you've always been, to me and to what I've read, on the edge of things, but at the right moment. What I'm saying here is that I know some people who are nerds who are always too soon. Not even on the edge. They are on the other side. They've been on Web3 for 5 years, but they didn't invest in crypto, so they don't even have the money that comes with it. Or they're great minds, but it seems to me you've always been right on the spot, right? Is that true?
I think, well, first of all, it's correct that being early is the same as being wrong. And I've definitely been early and wrong. Depending on how you count, I've done, more than 10 startups, and I've had 3 good outcomes, right? So I've still failed more than I've succeeded, to come back to the skateboarding analogy.
Did it hurt as much as skateboard?
Yeah. Like when people believe in you and you lose their money, that hurts a lot. You do a lot of soul searching when that happens, and but I think for me it's just been passion. I've always followed my nose, and I think also I do have this I have this thing that I'm okay with not being in the mainstream. I was just talking with a friend last night, and we were talking about where Web3 is today, and being at Ledger, and I was talking about being at Nullsoft in the late 90s. And now when I tell people that I was at Nullsoft and we worked on Winamp and Shoutcast and Nutella, which were these really pivotal things, and it was a very small team that did it, there's only 2 responses. People are like, well, I've never heard of it, or whoa, you were worked on Winamp,
Yeah.
And so the I feel like, and also we know that in the late 90s, there were a lot of snake oil salesmen. There were a lot of failures. There were a lot of people who invested a lot of money in things that were of the moment. And, maybe too early, maybe just wrong. But I'm really proud of what I did during that time. I'm super proud of what I did during the .com boom and bust. Because I had conviction and I had belief. And to be honest, I barely noticed it. I barely noticed the .com boom and bust. I only noticed the positive side. It was that all the snake oil salespeople got out of our way. And the same in 2008. I barely noticed, the crisis because I was doing something that I had, conviction in doing. I wasn't doing it because the market winds were blowing in a certain direction. I was doing it because I had a belief and a faith that this is going to change humanity and that this is important work to be done. And I feel that same way today.
It's interesting you say that because I think I was, compared to you, you started very young, but I was born 79. So the .com boom, I was 20 and something, and I didn't start my business path, right? Or how will I say my business actions or something like this. I started in 2005, and I went through the 2007-8 crisis the same as you did, I would say. It was like I was working on crowdsourcing images, uploading photos and video from. It was kind of in the same area as YouTube and journalism, and it was very interesting. And I was in my thing, and I didn't really care about all of those finances, bubbles, and so on. So it's interesting, actually.
Exactly when you have that conviction. And by the way, it's hard either way.
Yeah,
doing a startup is a roller coaster, and it's hard in good times and it's hard in bad times.
But when I looked, you're right. When I look at your path, your parcours, how would you say that?
The path.
Yeah,
sure.
So I went up and down and down and down on LinkedIn, and I saw that blue in my face, which was BeastieBoys.com. And mate, I'm a huge fan. Probably not as much as you, but of Beastie Boys. And I've seen probably their last concert in Paris.
Oh, wow.
And my God, it was amazing. And it's the only time I've seen them. But I was like, in the early 90s, it was like everything. I had all their albums. And so...
Same for me.
Yeah. Tell me what happened. It was not you started as a fan. Is that right?
Yeah, it really is a great story, and honestly, it's a great story all the way up to present day.
One thing before you start that story, Beastie Boys, because Juliette, you met my young producer. She was like, "What the fuck is Beastie Boys?" I'm like, "Fuck, you don't know Beastie Boys." So I asked a few of my colleagues and said, "Do you know Beastie Boys?" Some of them, yeah, sure. Even some of the young ones, but they were the music nerds, right? Probably. So they were. Was it a huge band? It was big in the US. Worldwide, it was quite big. But
the Beastie Boys story. First of all, there's a great book called Beastie Boys Book that came out. It actually is a great book. I'm not the slightest bit unbiased. I actually wrote a chapter and read a chapter in the audiobook. The audiobook is quite good. But what it does that I like, forget about me, is it paints this picture of New York in the 80s. And New York in the 80s as the center of the universe. If you weren't in New York in the 80s, you were not in the center of the universe. You were somewhere else.
True.
And you really feel that. And these guys were just three guys that were really lucky to be there. They're super talented. They met up with an incredible producer named Rick Rubin. And they were, because it was New York and they were who they were, they had all these roots. They had roots in punk rock, they had roots in reggae, they had roots in the early days of hip hop, and they were very connected to that, like deeply connected to it, just as fans themselves, as fans of Run DMC, who got on Run DMC's record label and had Run DMC's producer, and then made this really incredible album called License to Ill, which was the biggest selling rap album of all time, and it was the crossover. There's this cheesy song, "Fight for Your Right to Party," which was on MTV 24 hours a day.
Fight.
and now they did this. Now then they did, as a band, they did this amazing thing though. They went from that strength to kind of burning out as kids, because for them it was all kind of a laugh, and then you realize, like, wait, is this who I am? I'm like this frat party comedian. Like, that's not what I love music. That's not what I wanted to do. And they reinvented themselves more than once, which is the amazing thing about the story of this band. To be honest, they don't do a good enough job telling it either in their book or in the documentary that Spike Jonze made of them and put on Apple TV. And I would love to make the documentary. I told them when I saw the documentary that Spike made, I was like, it's great. The good news is I can still make my documentary because I have a different story to tell, which is one they can't tell themselves because it would be bragging. They should brag. No one has reinvented themselves like the Beastie Boys did.
That's true. That's a big problem for a lot of artists. I mean, they just do the same thing again and again. I mean, some of them.
So the Beastie Boys they made a punk rock record in 1983. They made a gigantic hit record in 1986. They came back with another record in 1989, and the world was just cold to them. It was as if the Spice Girls came out with an amazing album right now. People would be like, what? Why would you want to listen to the Spice Girls? And so the people that would want to listen to the Spice Girls wouldn't get the album. And the people who would like the album wouldn't listen to it because of the Spice Girls. That's what the Beastie Boys record was in 1989. The people who would love this record thought the Beastie Boys were cheesy.
Paul's Boutique.
Yeah. Okay. And the Beastie Boys fans were disappointed. The ones that were left, because they were just it was rap music had changed a lot in 3 years. You had NWA, you had you had MC Hammer, it was just a different world at that time. But they were, it was that good. I mean, it's still, you can read books about the album Paul's Boutique. It still stands up as one of the greatest albums of all time in my view to this day. That's what I fell in love with. And they were also this kind of interesting, enigmatic band because they had this punk rock history. And for me as a record collector, I felt like somebody was making music with my record collection because they were sampling everything from, Jimi Hendrix and the Beatles to Curtis Mayfield and the Eagles and, Kool and the Gang and just on and on. It was sort of like the layers you could go were so deep. Well, that lends itself really well to a record collector nerd like me, also a record collector internet nerd. You could actually easily fast forward to my NFT addiction from this point, right? Like you go, okay, who's the kid?
Go
who's
ahead.
If you just to tie it together, because you talk to my girlfriend, she'll tell you that it's a problem, but it's the same type of person who is going to hunt down every sample on Paul's Boutique and make a list of them and post that list to Usenet in 1992 that's going to be addicted to NFTs today. It's that it's the same sort of like user behavior. You know what I mean? Of kind of an obsessive compulsive personality who likes to solve puzzles and go layer after layer after layer after layer. But yeah, that band was just so much fun to do that with. And there was, as I mentioned earlier, this thing called Usenet, and it was how we shared information on the internet at the time. It was a public forum. It's like Reddit or even Discord in some ways today. But I was the steward of the Beastie Boys frequently asked questions list. Somebody had to be. I was, so you just had to keep that in a text file, and you got answers to the questions that got asked all the time, and then you post it once a week so that you could have a nice conversation the rest of the time, and people didn't jump in and just ask stupid questions like, is Mike D Screech from Saved by the Bell, which was a question that you would get annoyingly, and you had to get rid of it. Now, when
that's pretty cool though, because I mean, having someone managing the question about your band, or without asking, it's totally. I mean, you were a free community manager or something.
Exactly, free community manager.
I want exactly a free. If you're listening to this podcast and you're French speaking, I want a free community managers. I'm happy with that.
Exactly.
I would use that.
Exactly what I was, and they didn't know who I was, and they didn't even know Usenet existed.
Well, and it worked well at the end, though.
So I did. What happened was I when there was this new thing called the World Wide Web.
Yeah.
We used it in the project I was doing at the Indiana University Music Library.
What year?
I'm going to say 93. I don't, because 92 would be too early. 94 would already be too late. So it's got to be 93, I think. Okay. And I made the Beastie Boys homepage, and it was just to collect the FAQ someplace where I could just send people a URL. This was a new thing. Like, I don't have to post the whole file every time. Look, I can just send you this link, and boom, you got all the information.
Hypertext link. This is the future.
Exactly. By the way, this is the future of the metaverse as well. Any metaverse with a street in it is bullshit.
Okay.
This is my new realization. And hyperlinking is the way that you will move around metaverses. Running in the forest forever in cryptovoxels is really weird. When what you're really going to do is you're going to go from purposeful space to purposeful space, which is what the web brought us. I had that realization last week, so I throw it out there.
I mean, it makes sense, and we'd get there because obviously, just having to run 10th Street to go to the next link is, I mean, what the fuck? I don't want to be in the real world. I do that in the real world already. I don't want to wait 10 seconds, or even if I can run fast.
I enjoyed biking here today, but if I could have just showed up here from my apartment, I would have done it. So yeah, the
problem with that is that at the end of the day, you would bike in your apartment.
Exactly. Well, this is the weird thing that we've done, right? I mean, I've got a rowing machine in my apartment, and the Seine is out my window.
Yeah. Well,
humanity
can you
confused.
row in the Seine? That's another question we won't answer.
Should be able to. I mean, you can in Cambridge.
Yeah. In South Paris, West Paris, I'm sure you can have seen some. But
to be honest, I think it's harder than what I do in my living room, so I might stick with that. There was this new thing called the World Wide Web. I moved to that. I like I said, I'm obsessive compulsive, and it just had to have absolutely everything. Every magazine article, every album that had ever been made, if the 12-inch had been made in 5 different countries, I needed the serial numbers from all 5 countries, right? And so the website had everything. And then what happened was the Beastie Boys were on David Letterman, and I had a friend who had a nice Macintosh where you could encode video. He had a video card where you could do that. So we grabbed the performance on Letterman, and we had it on the website before the show aired on the West Coast, which we thought was awesome. We're like, this is the future.
But did you have could you stream a video prior 2000 on the web?
You could, and you know what? Here's another.
You had to download it at least.
You had to download it. It was QuickTime.
Okay.
But it was actually quite advanced. And when you think about what it could do, I think you might have been able to do it in line. Even you had a QuickTime plugin for Netscape in those days, and it's amazing where that was. Now, also, I had high-speed internet in my apartment at Indiana University, and I think that's a big part of my story, actually, because living in the future is cheating.
You didn't have a 256 modem?
I had an Ethernet jack, and I could plug multiple machines into. I was running servers I was running a web server in my apartment in 1994. And that, I think, when you're living in the future, it's cheating. Because when you live in the future, you can see the future.
It took me probably, I had that 10 or probably 12 years after that. Probably in 2005, I would say.
I remember there was a technology called See You See Me. I think it was developed at the University of Kansas. Somebody can correct me on that. But it was video conferencing technology. It was this grainy black and white video, and you could chat. And then sometimes, so with a friend in Los Angeles, I would get on a phone call, but we could look at each other. And I met Herbie Hancock that way because Herbie Hancock had the only ISDN connection in Los Angeles. So he wanted to, communicate with somebody else.
Do you believe there's some cheating like this today? I mean,
for sure.
Some people live in the future right now? Who are they? What do they have?
I feel like I'm living in the future because I am transacting a lot with cryptocurrency. I'm collecting a lot of digital art, and there's so many things about it that feel like the shape of things to come. I have multiple,
but it's accessible. I can do that myself, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So I just have to do it. I did it recently. Created NFTs and stuff like this. But
exactly.
What you had at the time was not accessible. This plug into the wall.
We had a visionary at Indiana University who lit up the campus, and I think that changed my life. To be honest, that guy. I think I almost could come up with his name, but that changed my life.
When did you realize the importance of Web3, NFTs, metaverse? I mix up everything, but when was that how do you say, revelation?
I think that my revelation on cryptocurrency has come in waves, and so you'd have to go back to 2009 when I first took a look at Bitcoin and said, this threatens state sovereignty, so it won't be allowed to exist. And my frame of reference for that was working at Nullsoft in the late 90s. We made an MP3 player called Winamp. We made a popular streaming technology called Shoutcast. We sold the company to AOL in May of 99. And we made a peer-to-peer, the first true peer-to-peer software called Nutella. So Napster was out. The RIAA was suing Napster. RIAA being the Record Industry Association of America. And we just went, this is so weird because this Napster product is not that great. And it has this kind of fatal flaw in that there's a central server in the middle, so you can sue it and you can shut it down. But TCP/IP makes distribution trivial. So what if we just make it so that it's, so that you can transfer any files you want to anybody? And that was what Nutella was. And Nutella ended up, we only worked on it for literally a month, and Justin was the coder, and he released the code into the wild as open source software, and that became the network that powered Kazaa, LimeWire, BearShare.
Okay.
So when people aren't familiar with Nutella, they're often familiar with one of those other products.
The idea was that we would share music for free most of the time, right? I mean, all of the time probably, and you would leave a part of your bandwidth and memory on your computer, so that it would be used to share and distribute mainly music. At some point, it was videos.
Videos as well, yeah. And ultimately, they were shut down.
And it was illegal.
Yeah, and so I mean it's a longer story, but because with Sean and Napster, I discouraged him from taking investment in Napster because I said, Sean, you can't raise venture capital for copyright infringement. Like, it was just this crazy moment when Sean was smart enough to build Napster, but not smart enough to know the implications legally. And you had so much money in the ecosystem that people were willing to fund copyright infringement in the hopes that we'll work it out later, which, by the way, is also exactly what YouTube was. And they did make it all the way to being what they are today, but they were exactly the same as Napster from a legal perspective.
TikTok is right now. I mean,
yeah, and we've come a long way, but I think Napster was the first trial run at that. Now, my point was, and this comes back to Bitcoin for me, there was a moment when we looked at each other and we went, are we going to go to jail? We didn't, thankfully, but we didn't know the answer to that question. We thought that maybe simply by having, built Nutella, that we might end up in jail. And so when I looked at Bitcoin and I remember all of the fights, the Kazaa, LimeWire, the watching the government bring all of its power to bear on these technologies, even though you cannot make the technology of blockchain illegal. You can make the exchange of assets illegal and scare, serious investors out of the market, right? That was my point of view in 2009 is
if you buy a Bitcoin or if you sell a Bitcoin, you're going to go to jail. I mean,
it's going to become, it'll be so regulated that what's the difference? Okay, it's a stock with a different technology,
okay,
right? But what happened that was surprising to me is that it kept growing and growing, and it got to that critical mass point where the game theory kicks in, and innovation is unstoppable. That's if something is technically possible, it's inevitable. So I think all of these technologies, what you have is you have a new human invention, which is scarce digital goods, and that invention will play out in a number of ways. So then the question is, Bitcoin specifically, because it is a very specific thing, this digital gold that is owned by no one, that can't be tampered with, can't be touched. It itself is an incredible, I mean, the invention of kind of blockchain technology, this trustless consensus, is incredible and solves a big problem, the Byzantine generals problem. But Bitcoin is actually a derivative there that is very special, and I think it's one of the greatest stories in humanity that this anonymous character, who may or may not be alive today, set this thing in motion, which is digital gold. And now that we're approaching a time of inflation, war, declining empires, digital gold might be gold, right? And that was really very difficult to see in 2009, even though it was kind of related to the 2008 crisis, financial crisis. but for me, I kind of bought into crypto in a big way around 2015. To me, the technology had just become mature enough. I thought that not only the Bitcoin narrative was increasingly interesting, but the Ethereum narrative was increasingly interesting. And then
It was before LVMH.
Right around the time I joined LVMH
Okay.
is when I bought in significantly into crypto.
The question that will come later, because we'll go back also to Beastie Boys, but is how can you bring in, when you're a head of digital in such a group? Maybe we can dig into right now, but because you discover those things on your computer at home, probably, or something like this, maybe on your smartphone, whatever. But how can you bring that into a group that is old? I mean, it's great, all due respect, but it's still, I mean, that was a bit early. Did you bring it in at some point, or is it still not really?
Well, let me connect the dots just a little bit and get there. So to go from kind of Beastie Boys fan to them calling me and going on tour with them in 1995. I then landed in Los Angeles and was at a company that was a design company that wanted to be a web design company. Did another Beastie Boys tour in 98.
Sorry, so I have to ask, what did happen? How did they connect with you, and what was your mood? I mean, it must have been completely...
So I got a call from the management company, and my thought was, okay, they're going to sue me for copyright infringement. And, their manager, John Silva, who is the greatest manager in the music business, and I think most people in the music business acknowledge that, and who I'm fortunate to still be friends with, and I'll be staying in his apartment in New York next week. It's a long road with all of these people, including LVMH, by the way, which I'm very proud of. But I think that John is an incredible music manager, and even in 1994, he had this idea that just wait, there's something here. I've got a kid that's passionate about this band. He seems to know how this technology works. And he's like, I said, are you going to shut me down? And he said, no, I'm not going to shut you down. I'm going to help you. And will you do this for all of my bands? And I said, oh. So I was in grad school. I started a consulting company and charged him, I think, $6.50. Maybe I think I upped my price to $8.50 an hour at that point. And
you should have met Naval Ravikant at that point.
My friend Mark Thompson and I had a whiteboard in my bedroom, which I turned into an office. I moved my bed into the closet, which caused my girlfriend to break up with me because there was only room for one person to sleep in the closet. And I had a whiteboard in my bedroom, which became an office that said "Fistful of Yen." Turning rock stars' money into fun since 1994. And that was what my friend Mark and I decided to do. But then what happened was I was just kind of like building websites, which felt like kind of a nerdy thing to do. I had met the band on Lollapalooza in 1994. It was the first time they'd seen the World Wide Web. I showed a room full of people the World Wide Web for the first time on Lollapalooza in 1994. But they got it. I always say that anybody who ever made a fanzine with a Sharpie and a photocopier understood the internet day one. I really feel lucky that to come from punk rock and skateboarding, I think the internet makes way more sense to you. If you come from mainstream culture, I think the internet is super confusing because you think that like the world where there were 3 television channels was a better world. Yeah. I encounter that every single day.
It was okay with Michael Jackson and Britney, and I mean,
why do we need all this other stuff? Yeah. It's just a bunch of noise. Like, as somebody who never liked the mainstream stuff, the internet was just like, it was this gift.
That's interesting.
I met people who liked the same music as me for the first time in my life on the internet. Right?
Worldwide.
I never met them. Yeah, I never met them in person in Goshen, Indiana.
And it's true for, I mean, many things. I mean, much more than music. I mean, it can be like, I don't know, building houses or I don't know, whatever passion you have, actually.
It's everything, and it's the future of humanity. I mean, this is why we will move from nation states to network states. And I was at the JP Morgan conference in Miami a couple months ago, which in itself is funny. That they would want a skateboarder from Indiana at that conference is hilarious. But what I heard was, people talking about how do we get back to a more centrist political discourse, right? I'm sorry, you don't. This is we humans would like to think that we are these sovereign creatures and technology is our tool, but no, technology shapes culture. Without the printing press, you don't get the Crusades. Without radio, you don't get the Third Reich in the form that we had it. Without the internet, you don't get Donald Trump, you don't get Brexit. Without Telegram, you don't get the Ukraine conflict in its current form. We are intermeshed with technology in an inextricable way. And it is more likely that the United States will be broken into 7 countries than it is that humanity will go back to a world where there's 3 television channels and there's nothing to watch on Sundays. That won't happen. It will never happen, which is why we will never go back to more centrist political discourse. And because we now have kind of unlimited voice, and we're not constrained by geographical boundaries. We spend the majority of our time and attention in borderless worlds.
This is, I wrote this from nation states to network states. This is, I don't know. You put words on things I've been thinking for a long time, but it's
nation states don't go quietly either. It's going to be bloody.
Yeah, but it's at the same time it seems like an amazing opportunity, and at the same time it's scary how far my neighbors are from me. My freaking neighbors who are living really 10 meters from me. I'm probably closer to you. You live in Paris, but closer to many people living in wherever, Asia, Absolutely. Australia, like much, 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 much closer in my mind, in my thoughts, in my political or visions of the future of many things. This is deep.
Look at Meta, which, the company formerly known as Facebook. Look at their definition of a metaverse is people who are not in the same space as one another collaborating. We all do that every day. That's not a futuristic vision. We all collaborate with people that we're not in the same space with all day, every day. It's what we do. That's my job, in fact, is to collaborate with people that I'm not in the same physical space with. And so we live in that world. We look at the screen time on your phone. When you are on your phone, you're living in a world that doesn't have geographical boundaries.
What's fun, what you're saying also is that you should go back to that day where you showed this website to all of those guys in the room, right? Including the 3 Beastie Boys. Is that right? Yeah. That day you were with people like you, more or less, right? And even though some other people are like you, whatever. But what I'm saying is that you went from a world that was kind of before digital to then digital, doing those things, discovering all other people like you on that website that was, you said,
Usenet.
Usenet, yeah.
Which is actually pre-web.
Pre-web, yeah.
Its own service.
Okay. And then you understood that. The problem probably with younger generations is that they've always lived with Facebook, Twitter. They were teens.
They've always had access. When I grew up, there was nothing to watch on television on Sundays. Just think of that simple thing.
Yeah, that's true.
And I didn't know what to do with myself, right? So I had to invent things to do. And a kid today, like, can you imagine being bored? It's fundamentally
waiting
different.
At the doctor's and doing nothing.
Exactly.
My God, like for an hour, you're like,
exactly.
We had to go through that. Which was it good or bad? I don't know.
See, I don't think there is such a thing. I think that we could decide that for ourselves, but the reality is that change is inevitable. And I think that it's funny, as humans we constantly fall into this trap, right? We think that our parents don't get it and our kids don't appreciate it. Well, I can't. Every generation thinks that. We're not all correct about that. The reality is that time moves on. And I think that the real mistake that people make is they look at the last 70 years and they say, well, that's how humanity should be. Well, yeah, it was the most peaceful time in history, the most prosperous time in history. Was not a great time for everybody. So it's usually somebody who has done quite well, who's making that statement. But the reality is that the world will change. There's just no question. And there are new frontiers. There are always new frontiers. Once upon a time, America was a new frontier. Once upon a time, night was a new frontier. And there's no question now that networked world. That's why I don't like the term metaverse, because it when
it makes you think Second Life.
You just picture a 3D world immediately, and you're like, oh wow, that's the future. No. What's the future is that humanity is networked together, and we use that tool to collaborate.
And it's also deeply the present for a lot of people. I mean, when you play on games, you play with. I mean, some people live in the meta world already.
It makes you question, what is life? What is happiness? What is the meaning of life? I mean, I grew up in Goshen, Indiana. That I promise you, playing video games is more exciting than the world outside my door, right? Now that might not be the case if you live in Paris or you live in New York or you live in Tokyo, and these are always the people that are like, I don't understand. Okay, well, I'll tell you what, move to, the middle of nowhere as a 14-year-old. And, try to figure out who you are and connect and have passion and have ambition. And how do you find it? You're going to find it on the internet, period. Or you're not going to find it.
Yeah. Interesting.
So you asked an LVMH question, though. And I was trying to get to that point where, we did digital music. We sold this company to AOL. Two of us left, started another company that was kind of like a web-based version of Winamp that we sold to Yahoo. So
Winamp was it a player? I mean,
Winamp was an MP3 player. If you had MP3s in 1998, you had Winamp.
Yeah, I had Winamp.
It was I keep saying, MetaMask is kind of like what Winamp is now. Like if you posted an MP3 online in 1998, you linked to Winamp because people didn't know how to play it. You had to tell people. Right now we take for granted that we pick up our phone, we hit play on YouTube and videos and audio play, but playing audio and video in those days was difficult. And you had to, most computers didn't come with an audio card. You had to buy a secondary piece of hardware to, get, and then plug a headphone jack into it. And then what, you're going to carry your computer around and listen to music? I mean, but we went through this journey. There's an incredible human being who was Sheryl Sandberg's husband. His name was Dave Goldberg. He passed away a few years ago. But he is the one who bought my company and brought me into Yahoo.
Okay.
And honestly, I think one thing that I should say is that my career is really a history of mentors. Whether it was John Silva, well, at the university level, I had great mentors. David Fensky, Dr. Springer was a computer science professor who really cared a lot about me. They pushed me along. They believed in me more than I did. I told you the story of my stepdad. I think he believed in me more than I did at that moment. I think that my professors did. I think that the Beastie Boys for sure believed in me more than I did. When they wanted to take me on tour, I told them, I said, I don't even know how to do that. You should get someone else. Their production manager said, you want to do this, kid. We'll figure it out.
Why would you say they did? I mean...
I don't know. It's such a good question. I think I understand it better now because I just invested in this young woman's company. And when I heard the company idea, I said... I'm not interested. I met her and I would invest in anything this woman did. And I understand now. Maybe I had that thing that she has. I wouldn't see it in myself, but when I'm sitting across, from this young woman and I just see that she's got the passion and the intelligence and the fighter spirit.
What's her name?
And
can I ask?
Yeah, her name is Claire Lessard.
Okay.
And you go, wow. Okay. Yeah. I don't know if this is going to be your thing, but you're going to be successful in life. You've got it. And so I think that, I don't know, maybe I had that and I understand. I feel like I understand it a little more because I see it in other people now. But I definitely didn't believe in myself, and these people believed in me. Dave Goldberg is a great example. And by the way, there are 1,000 people in Silicon Valley that have the same story as me with respect to Dave Goldberg. He's the greatest human being that ever walked through Silicon Valley. And I don't think I'm alone in believing that, in just his generosity to others. And he's the one that, helped me become a VP at Yahoo. I didn't care. He said it mattered. I told him I didn't think it mattered. He was right. I was wrong.
Okay, sorry. He was Sheryl Sandberg's husband.
Correct.
Right. Yeah. Okay. I knew, of course.
And he's also the one that when he left Yahoo Music, put me in charge of Yahoo Music to the degree that he could. He actually didn't have that control, but that's how great he was. He set up all the pieces. I had tried to quit on him 3 times, and he took me out to lunch and said, Ian, would you have any interest in running Yahoo Music? And I was like, is this a trick question? That's your job. Are you asking me if I'm coming after your job? And he's like, no, let's say it wasn't my job. Would you be interested in it? I said, yeah, I would. He said, okay, sit still. Stop trying to leave this company. I'm trying to do this, but if you keep moving around, I can't get it done. I was like, I said, I got you. Okay. That's exactly what he did. Just an incredible human being. 2 weeks before he died, my daughter and I went to a basketball game with him, and he had a list of things he was going to do for my daughter because she was graduating from Stanford with a PhD. And man, what a human being. So anyway, I just want to point out though for your listeners, because you talked about the how, mentors. If you're given 2 jobs, take the one that has the better mentorship relationship. Forget about the money. Forget about the money. It doesn't matter. If one will pay you half as much, but you have a better mentor, take that one always.
That's a good feeling.
And you need people. You can't do it alone. You need people that are going to teach you, fight for you, point out where you're an idiot. You know, I needed that. After that, I had another incredible mentor named Peter Gocher, who was the founder of. He invented Pro Tools and founded DigiDesign, the company that made Pro Tools, and completely changed audio recording. And Avid, he actually merged the company with Avid, which changed video recording, and they took that company public. And just an incredible human being.
Do you still need mentors?
Absolutely.
Does Bernard Arnault needs mentors?
He has a lot of advisors. I think if you look at the way Bernard Arnault operates, he always triangulates. I would say, here's a great. This is, I think, a bit of a how. There's the Knowledge Project podcast.
Not sure. No.
Shane, it's a great one actually. There's a great episode with Daniel Kahneman, the author of Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow.
Yeah.
And Daniel's very up there in age. He has a new book that came out in the past year, actually, but he's quite elderly at this point. And
Farnham Street.
But when you're, exactly.
Okay,
When you listen to Daniel Kahneman on that podcast, you are listening to a living legend who probably knows as much about the brain and how the brain works as anyone on the planet.
Episode 68. I'll put the link. Okay.
And, at the end of the podcast, I think the host name is Shane. He asks him, given everything that you know about the brain, what is the best advice that you could give to human beings? Such a great question. To Daniel Kahneman, I'm just like, wow. And Kahneman says, delay intuition. And I heard that, and I was working with Bernard Arnault at the time. And for 5 years, I had a meeting every other Friday with Bernard Arnault. I still meet with him quarterly. I'm still consulting for LVMH. I'm very proud of my relationship, my continued relationship with them. And when he said delay intuition, I thought of Bernard Arnault. As I've had debates with Bernard Arnault, which I've thought I've won, and then at the end he says, let's talk about it tomorrow. And it's so frustrating for me because I'm like, no, we just decided. We just had the conversation. We decided. But he knows what Kahneman knows about the brain. We will be smarter tomorrow. So Bernard Arnault is always triangulating. He's very curious. And he never trusts fully. He wants to talk to you and to me and to him and to her. And he's going to listen to everyone. And then he finds his own truth at the intersection of that. So that to me is a form of mentorship. I mean, that's what we do with our mentors. I know my mentors aren't perfect, and I take what I can and I make it mine. You want me to get to the LVMH point finally?
Yeah. But we're on that. That's how it works here. So we know we're going to that point. So anyway, our listeners probably are waiting for that. So one question about that, and working with someone like Bernard Arnault, and is what are the conditions? When you're a kind of advisor's coach or people, you have to not tell him what he wants to hear, I believe. But what are the conditions? How should you behave? What is he waiting for? Because you can say shit sometime, I believe, because you believe things are going to happen and they don't happen, but he's still curious about ideas.
Yeah, I think, look, if you're Bernard Arnault, you have very little time, right? Given there are a lot of demands on your time,
Yeah.
put it that way. So you have kind of an infinite amount of choice what you could do. So you really get to choose what you care about. He's incredibly curious. He cares deeply about creativity. That I think is why I connect to him. I just think that I think it's beautiful that his business premise works. It gives me hope in humanity. The fact that you can be at the top of the Forbes list with the investment thesis that you back creativity with operational efficiency, that honestly warms my heart. And I know that he cares deeply about creativity on a personal level, and you can see it in the way that he spends his time. You know, the amount of time that he spends with people like Peter Marino, as an example, you know, shows that he has a deep, you know, personal interest in how creation comes to life. You know, but then what he does, he says, okay, well, what is the ecosystem that you put around creativity? You know, how does that ecosystem exist? And now for me, that's a perfect fit. Like what I've always, you know, you asked me what the point I was first excited about Web3 was, but what I really remember is the point I was excited about the web. And for me, that had to do, as a music fan, you know, realizing that the distribution of music and the discovery of music was going to change, and it was going to move from these gatekeepers of FM radio and the record store to something else, right? That was what excited me. That was also, you know, what interested me about luxury. I think what I became over 20 years in the music business is a student of how the internet is changing culture and changing humanity, but I don't know that much about finance. I live much more in a cultural sphere. So to me, the interest has always been, how is it changing culture? How is it changing the way that people interact? And I've never been in denial about it. I've always been excited about it, because a world where there's only a certain number of channels on radio, a certain number of channels on television, a certain number of magazines at the magazine rack, I hate that world. I despise that world.
Yeah.
And I'm the kid that used to drive an hour from Goshen to South Bend to get a copy of Maximum Rock and Roll magazine so I could mail order albums ask my mom to write checks and mail order albums from Berkeley, California. So the internet to me fixed a real problem, right? And so for many people, it breaks something that they enjoyed. You know, they enjoyed this kind of middle of the road, super safe, you know, I can turn on the radio and it won't upset my children world. I hate that world, right? So for me, that's what I've always been like, wait, how is it changing culture? How do we make that change happen faster? Where does it go next? That's where my passion lies. So the transition for me from the music world to LVMH was quite circumstantial. So, you know, I had done Beats music with Jimmy Iovine and Dr. Dre, which is a story that's pretty well told in the documentary, The Defiant Ones. And it was really fantastic. I miss those guys so much.
You'll tell me a bit about it, but your learnings, but maybe later. Right?
Then we sold the company to Apple, which was fantastic, like an unbelievable dream come true. You know, I can show you the photos on my phone from, you know, the day that we, you know, did the announcement with Tim Cook and Eddie Q and Dr. Dre and Jimmy Iovine, and to be there with them, you know. And I had this realization. Well, I'll come back to that. But but once I was at Apple and we built Apple Music, I was very proud because it felt like my life's work. You know, I'd gone from, you know, and if I talked to you about streaming music in 1992 or 93, you would have just been like eyes glazed over. Worse than if I talked to you about NFTs today, right? Like, what are you doing? Why? Who cares? Even in 1998, people were like, we have CDs, Ian. Have you seen them? They work really well. Like, why do you want to listen to music on your computer? You know, so to watch Tim Cook walk out on stage with the words, "We love music" behind him, which is, by the way, what I just care about. You know, for me, if you turn off the television and turn on music, life improves immediately. Like, please throw your TV away. I haven't watched television since 1989. I beg every listener, throw it away. Music will change your life. I believe this. So watching Tim Cook walk out on stage with those words behind him and announce, you know, my product is on every iPhone. We fucking did it, man. We did it. This is a long walk. It was a 20-year walk, but we did it.
This is, I mean, while I was preparing this recording, Ian, I was like, I mean, the man did it. I mean, you're at Apple. I mean, dude, you know, it's wow. It's like even when you say all of the things you just said. I mean, on top of creativity, Apple was. I mean, what changed my life was in 2004 when I had my first iPod, the white thing, like with the blue screen. I mean, that was wow. And so 10 years after that, you arrived at Apple, and you didn't stay. Were you disappointed at some point by Apple?
By the way, you should have Tony Fidel, who lives here in Paris.
I won't.
On the podcast.
You tell him.
He just left on a book tour.
Okay.
His book comes out soon. He left Monday morning.
Will you tell him to come?
Yes.
Okay.
But he'll be a fantastic guest.
Yeah, sure.
And his story with the iPod is tremendous, and I'm proud to kind of carry on a piece of that. By building Apple Music. At the same time, I think the operative word in "we did it" is we did it. It felt like it was done to
done.
me.
Okay.
An oligarchy of Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Amazon. I had this thought. I was like, okay, I'm lucky. I know how fortunate I am. I'm very fortunate. Okay, but that's probably it. I might be done now. I might be done. Like that might be, now I guess I run a streaming music service. Okay. And I just, I have an itch, I don't, that prospect wasn't exciting to me. Kind of being, but I also felt like, I don't know if I could do anything else. I'm so passionate about music. Maybe I couldn't get excited about anything else. So you have that curiosity. Well, I get a call from a recruiter. The recruiter says to me, are you familiar with LVMH? And I honestly said, no, I'm not. I went to Wikipedia. I was like, oh, okay, I'm familiar with the brands.
Yeah.
I listen to hip hop. I know what Louis Vuitton is, but I was not a luxury customer. I was not.
I love this. When I listen to hip hop, I know what Louis Vuitton is.
I had never set foot in a Louis Vuitton store in my life. I even as the CEO of Beats Music, I wore a Black Sabbath t-shirt and Vans to work every day. Right? I had no fashion was. I'm a skateboarder. It was, that was fashion to me. T-shirt, jeans, Vans. That's fashion. Right? Never thought about it. And, but I'm a quick study, I dug into it, and here's what I loved about the LVMH challenge. Well, I watched music go from 0% digital to basically 99% digital, right? Still good vinyl sales, but apart from that, all digital. Here you've got this industry that's 3% digital that I believe works with the mechanics of the internet. Because again, as a student of the way the internet was changing culture, I had these fundamental beliefs that we're moving from mass markets to niche markets. In 2008, in the book "What Would Google Do?", Jeff Jarvis wrote, "We're moving from mass to massive niche," and that was like, yes, I saw that. The other, and there was a great piece written by a guy named Umair Haq in 2004 called "The Blockbuster versus the Snowball," and his point was that the physics of the internet are inverse when it comes to media, where in the old world you would at some point get diminishing returns investing in the quality of the content.
Okay.
And you got kind of infinite value out of marketing. In other words, if we're making the new Marvel movie, we're not trying to make Citizen Kane. We're just trying to get people to go to theater A instead of theater B this weekend. And if we if we have an extra $2 million and we're faced with the choice of, putting someone's face on the cups at McDonald's or making the movie better, we're going to invest in the marketing, not the content. The internet is the exact inverse, right? Where at a certain point you get diminishing returns on marketing, but quality is hyper efficient because, how do people find out about your podcast? Someone says, you got to hear this, right? And that's what works. That's where the efficiency lies.
And it works on content. It works on stores. If you have a shitty store, then, if you have a shitty service, then at the end of the day, you will probably close. And
this applied. And so I said that this was the reason that I said yes to LVMH, because I looked at LVMH and I said, this conglomerate is a mass of niches which are focused on quality. That works. That's going to work on the internet. Like the wind is blowing in the direction of LVMH. These guys just need to raise the sails. You put this stuff on the internet and it will work, but you have to do it in the right way, in a very qualitative way.
Well, when you see it that way, it makes a lot of sense. And I believe it was very innovative. On the other way around, because when you go to, I've been working with some of those luxury brands for years, for 10 years or something like this. And 10 years ago, most of them would tell you, digital cannot work for us because we are services company, we are experience company. So when you come when you come to our store, you will get a wonderful service. You will get someone who will offer you a coffee, champagne, whatever you want. You will sit here. You will get an after sale, amazing. If you have problems, everything is about service, experience, quality. You have to feel the product. You have to see the leather. You have to see the whatever it's made of, and this cannot work on the internet. That was all of those people were saying 10 years ago, right?
Well, I think a couple things. It was definitely smart to not commoditize the product, right? Anyone who thought that luxury should have gone in the direction of Amazon would have been wrong, right? So the thing that Ben Arano and the team knew intrinsically is you have to keep it premium. Mm-hmm. And if it can't be premium, then we can't go there. So, I think, I got Mr. Arnaud to agree to a quote that we used early on where, because when I came into the role, people said, oh, wow, you're going to work for the guy who said brick and mortar is still king. And I said, I think he's right. But what he meant to say is customer experience is king. Right. And that's what was meant, because in what you said, it's true. The customer experience of going to a Dior shop is extraordinary. And so what we said is, unless we can offer something that is, truly premium online, then we should stay out of it. Right. But the reality is that you have to dig deeper. You have to actually ask, why fashion? Right? What is it that we do? These garments, I'm not buying a fur coat from Fendi to stay warm. There are more.
You get the North Face or Patagonia, maybe.
I'm not buying that Dior handbag because of its incredible utility and 5-star reviews on Amazon, right? But this is where it's like music, because in music, like when you sell someone an Eminem compact disc in 1999. You weren't selling them a piece of plastic with some digital data on it, right? You were selling them the feeling that you have as a 15-year-old kid listening to Eminem. You're selling culture.
You would own part of this thing. You're part of the history, probably. Yeah.
You're just selling culture.
Yeah.
You're selling a feeling. You're not selling a product. And that's, for luxury, it's the same. They sell culture as a prerequisite to selling product. Right? If you don't believe in the brand, then you're not going to be a part of that brand. And there are a number of things that make you believe. It's the experience, the way they treat you, the quality of the product, the design of the product, the way that you feel about the marketing that they do online. Because I believe that people online are kind of trying to look in a mirror and they're asking themselves, do I see myself in that brand? Does that brand represent me? When I wear that brand, do I feel like I'm expressing something that represents who I am? And it's about individualism. It's about, I'm a part of this tribe. I'm not a part of that tribe. That was what made it so easy for me, is that I realized that carrying a Louis Vuitton bag is the same as me wearing a Thrasher t-shirt in 1986 or me wearing a Black Sabbath t-shirt in 2015. This is who I am. I'm part of this tribe.
And how do you explain the price then? I mean, is it because it's the fabrics, the origin? Is it because it shows people you're rich? I mean, is it a mix of everything?
I think the price is I think the luxury being overpriced is a myth. The markup on luxury is the same as the markup on a cheap good on a percentage basis. It's just that they're using higher quality products. They're making it, they're making it in France, not in China or Italy. I've looked deeply in the P&Ls of these companies, and they don't look any different than the P&L of any other.
So that's part
fashion brand.
Then at the end of the day, it's part of the game. It's better processed, so you don't buy things that have been made in Bangladesh or with probably it's better for economy, for the planet. I don't know. At some point, I don't know.
Look, as I said earlier, I'm not sure I believe in better or worse. There are certainly things that we could do better for the planet, and fast fashion is certainly not good for the planet. I think, though, the reality is that if we really wanted to do the absolute right thing for the planet, we'd all stop eating meat today, and we'd stop buying clothes, and we'd stop being consumers. Okay, well, then the economies would collapse and humanity wouldn't support itself for different reasons. So it's a longer conversation. Yeah. But I think in terms of the quality of the goods, it's really just I think it's actually deeper than that, right? The question is, what is it that you value? And if you value, high quality fabrics or leathers and craft and the design that goes into it, because there's a designer who's expressing themselves in this art form of fashion. Well, then you pay the price to have that, and you're not just buying the thing; you're buying the culture.
Yeah,
and this is where it crosses over into NFTs. And Nicolas Audinet at Gucci, I quote him every day because he said to me, luxury and NFTs are the same thing. They're both creativity, scarcity, and community. And that's actually a part of it as well. And that's why I mentioned the Thrasher t-shirt, and I say 1986 as well, because if I saw you on the street or in a shopping mall wearing a Thrasher t-shirt in 1986, I would walk up to you and strike up a conversation because you're obviously a skateboarder. I'm looking at your shoes. I can see that you've got an ollie hole or you don't, and we're in the same tribe, right? And that's what we're, when we come back to the network state, that's what we're doing. I've got a Moonbird and a Proof Collective pass in my wallet. That means I'm part of a certain tribe online. And
show me your wallet, I'll tell you who you are, right?
And just as if you were sitting across from me wearing a Richard Mille, okay, that would tell me something about you, right? Fashion does this, and so I think it's really a mistake. That the problem is that people just conflate the concept of like staying warm with fashion. They're not related to one another at all.
What's interesting about what you're saying about brands is also, have you seen recently? So when we record this, we're still, I don't know how long it's going to be, but with the conflicts between Russia and Ukraine. And have you seen those Russian women cutting their Chanel bags?
Yeah.
And you say you believe in the brands or you don't. And I believe, which is interesting in that movement, is that they don't believe anymore in the brand, whatever the reason, right?
Yeah, and I think that, these, and this is why it makes sense to me, I guess. Brands, bands, skateboard brands, and also then the media that houses them, it's an ecosystem. It's an economy is another way to think of it, right? I think skateboarding has stayed like quite cool, I would say, for 30 years. I think that that's due in large part to one man, a guy named Jake Phelps, who was the editor of Thrasher magazine. And whenever somebody corny came into the space, he demolished them, right? And he kept it core, he kept it cool, he kept it true. These are not like rules, but they become like kind of cultural boundaries, right? And brands and bands and other types of things, communities, it's becoming, right? If we look at the world of NFTs, which I think has very interesting implications on marketing and media, et cetera, they become kind of their own ecosystem, their own economies. My friend Ariel Wengroff, who runs marketing and communications for Ledger, gave me an interesting stat last night. She said that when optimized, communities spend 70 to 80% of what they spend is within the community. And I think that's quite interesting when you think about the future of humanity and this move from nation state to network state.
Can you image this? Can you?
Well, in other words, I think if you think about a small town as an example, you could imagine the majority of the money being spent, kind of circulating in that economy. I work at Walmart.
Doesn't go out of the
spend my money at
community.
Walmart, and I eat at the corner place, and kind of goes in my community. Now, obviously, the internet has changed that a lot. Like a lot of people are spending their money on Amazon instead of their local Walmart, and we could argue that spending your money at your local Walmart isn't spending money locally either. But you know what I mean? And I want to actually dig into this stat with her and know exactly what it means. But it touches on something I've been thinking about, which is, people go, oh, do you think this cryptocurrency thing is real? Do you think this NFT thing is real? The thing that tells me it's 1,000% real, in the same way that I'm the guy, it's 1998, and I'm sitting here telling you, yes, this internet's going to be big. Sure, there might be a bubble. The bubble will burst. There'll be a trough of disillusionment and before it goes up again. But yes, this is going to change our lives, is because we live in these borderless communities. We live there. We spend our time there. The same way I did on Usenet in 1993. It's happening at scale now, right? I mean, you're employing people who live, in Eastern Europe, in Singapore, Tunisia, and of course that online world is going to have its own economy. Then the question is, like, what happens as those economies get kind of smaller and smaller? Here's a really simple example. If you're a 16-year-old kid and you are like a fanatical sneaker trader, I bet the majority of your wealth is in sneakers. And sometimes you're going to convert a little bit of that wealth to buy dinner at Burger King, right? You could imagine that for an adult in the world of NFTs. The majority of their wealth is in these JPEGs, and they know how to like move them around enough to pay their rent and eat. But really, there's just this short little bridge, and you can imagine that bridge becoming invisible, right? Because I tap my phone, right, to buy what I buy, and a conversion happens immediately. I'm using an American card to buy in euros all day, every day, living here. That could be Ethereum instead of one of the middle.
We're going to dig a bit into that. If for the French-speaking listeners that want to know more about NFTs, Web3, I would highly recommend an episode I've recorded a few months ago with John Carp on La Martingale, which is my second podcast. Or I told you earlier on with Frédéric Montagnon on Web3, or Nicolas Julien, you know him probably from Sora.
Yep.
And most recently, actually, with Jean-Michel Payon.
Cool.
Yeah, on La Martingale, my other podcast. And I was recommending every week on my newsletter recommendation from Jean-Michel on art, NFT art. I will start it again at some point. He wrote to me actually yesterday night.
He's got a gallery opening tonight.
All right.
I'll be going.
He wrote to me yesterday. I probably didn't watch, but maybe it's about that. Yeah. Actually, we had a very interesting conversation with Jean-Michel. Because, I mean, a lot of people don't buy it. I mean, they don't buy the whole Web3 shit and the whole thing. And even sometimes they all so oppose. They take that, say, from actually the Oracle Elon Musk, who said the whole Web3 is BS bullshit, and you're like, okay, but it's happening. And what he says is that actually, like in the real world, Jean-Michel, sorry. Probably 90 in the art world, probably 90 or 99% of what you're going to buy as photographies or any art things you would buy in your small town from the local artist, it will never worth a penny. I mean, or nothing, near to nothing, right? But still, there is some of this that will be worth a lot because a lot of people will want it. Like this Trasher T-shirt you had. If you could get right now a Trasher T-shirt from 1986 that is brand new under its plastic, how much would you spend? I mean,
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And I think that it's Look, there are 50 million songs on Spotify. Most of them are garbage. I don't know how many books there are on Amazon. Most of them are garbage, right? But and yes, most art in the world is not is not worth a lot.
The long tail, right?
Exactly, but that doesn't mean the art forms are. There will always, in creative endeavors, there will always be more aspirants than there will be success stories. Yet the success stories are the exceptions that prove the rule. I think there's something bigger here, though, in that just the market sizes are completely different. And I think, look, I don't mind people saying that it's bullshit at all, because they're largely right. I mean, most of it is bullshit, like to Jean-Michel's point. But the problem is, look, in the late 90s, there was a website called Fucked Company, and all it did was detail all of the like layoffs, bad behavior, companies going belly up, et cetera. There's a Twitter account right now that's doing the same thing for Web3. I think it's called Web3 is going great. And if you want every horror story, then you can just tune in there. But what I always say is like, look, if you're focused on the car crash, then you're going to miss the race, right? I mean, it's fun to look at the car crash. We have some, primal urge to do it. But my primal urge is to say, how fast can the car go? Right? Yeah, I know it could crash, but how fast might it go? And when you look at it from that angle, it's just unquestionable that this is going to have a massive impact. Let's look at the luxury business for a second. I have a couple of luxury goods that are collectibles. I have a pair of shoes that's a collaboration between Golden Goose and Off-White that are signed by the Golden Goose founder and Virgil. And because I was the chief digital officer of LVMH, Virgil wrote free Wi-Fi on the back of my shoes.
Do you wear them?
No, they're in a box. They've never been touched. Right. So, but I know they have value.
Yeah.
I don't know what the value is. Don't care. I'll never sell them, but I know they have value. I have a Louis Vuitton Supreme skateboard case. There are very few of them. God. They sold at Christie's, so I have some sense of what the value is. It's at least 3x what I paid for it. But the point is that I don't think about those items every day because they're not a part of a global, always on marketplace. Now, if I open my phone,
you have to type the Louis Vuitton skateboard on Google. It's
it's amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing. Sorry.
LVMH actually made me a coffee table case for it as well.
Oh my god!
But look, if I just open my inbox, just look at all the things OpenSea, offer on. You just scroll forever. I know what so many things in my wallet are worth because I'm constantly getting offers on them. Because they are part of this always on, always liquid marketplace where the items can't be scratched and there is no cost, very little cost on a relative basis to transfer them from one to another. Selling that Vuitton skate case would be a total pain in the ass, logistically, right? It'd be very difficult to know exactly what the right price was. Yet in this kind of perfect marketplace online, I can know that. I bought a piece of art from a Japanese artist named Ema Shiro 2 weeks ago. Yesterday, the artist sent me a link to the printed piece with him signing it, with him sticking a little QR code on it that will show the provenance of the piece. And I contrast that with buying a piece of real art. I'm buying a Sarah Moon piece right now in the physical world, where I've got two galleries. No one's really they aren't even the same size, even though they're supposedly the same edition. The one gallerist won't tell me what the number is. Why is the price the right price? Well, because we say it is. I don't have any ability to look at all of the sales. This kind of opaque marketplace. And there's a great interview on Raoul Paul's show with Punk 6529, where he talks about the similar thing with buying art. And he has a great quote, which is just, of course, a marketplace which is global and always on and zero friction has orders of magnitude more opportunity than, an art store in Soho where there are 0 people in the store on an average Tuesday afternoon.
Yeah.
This is an order of magnitude more, opportunity. And the only thing that's holding people back is just being old and saying, I don't understand why something digital can be craft. Well, I'm sorry, but that's idiotic, right? I mean, if you try to tell me that someone spends their whole life, with this craft of leather making, and their craft is you kill a cow, you take the skin of the cow and you color it and you cut it into shapes and that's craft. But spending your whole life with the craft of coding and making something beautiful that someone else finds value in, somebody wants to exchange value for, that's not craft. I'm sorry, but that makes me upset. I spent the weekend at Bright Moments in Berlin last weekend, which is an incredible gallery exhibition they're doing all over the world. They'll be doing it in July in London, and I super encourage every listener to just go see it. Just see it.
What's it called again?
Bright Moments.
Bright Moments.
If you go to brightmoments.io, you'll find it. They're in Berlin right now at Kraftwerk. This week is the last week. And And but there was an incredible artist who goes by MPKOZ. His name is Mike. He lives in Seattle, and I was lucky to have lunch with a truly great artist. His art is code, right? Okay. Did Vermeer use a camera obscura? Does that make it less art? Somebody spends their life honing a craft. They make something of beauty. Someone else finds value in it. It's a genuinely scarce good. You trade value for that good. You hang it on your wall. You look at it. You love it. You find it beautiful. I encourage everyone. I think there's 3 interviews that are worth listening to. All English language. I apologize, but the Proof podcast, which Kevin Rose does, has real gems on it. There's one with an artist named Matt Kane, who has an incredible project called Gazers, that's very worth listening to. And his story about being an artist, being an oil painter, moving that to kind of 3D resin objects, and then moving into code. It's one of those things where there's no way you could deny that Matt Kane is an artist. He didn't do this for money. He has an artistic vision that he's trying to realize. There's another episode on there with a guy named Derek Edward Schloss, who's a big collector. And I think his point of view is quite profound, actually. And then there's a third, which I already mentioned, which is Punk 6529 on Raoul Paul's show on Real Vision. And I think that those 3 they have a very cogent vision of the future, which I believe will prove to be accurate. So, denial is a river in Africa, right? So a lot of people. I remember very well the people who in 1998 told me this internet thing is a fad. I remember the AT&T executive who in 2002 told me we'll never be able to do video on the internet. I remember the people who, when the iPhone came out, they said, "Oh, everyone's never going to have a smartphone. Mm-hmm. This is great for rich people, but everyone's never going to have a smartphone." So when people say to me, this Web3 thing is bullshit, NFTs are a fad, I just don't care. It doesn't register for me. It's like, I'll see you in 10 years. I'll see you in 10 years when your passport is an NFT. Yeah. And then you'll understand what the hell it was I was talking about.
I would tell everyone also, you have to just try if you didn't. I mean, just get a MetaMask, buy some crypto somewhere, buy an NFT, create an NFT. I did that several times. We're still experiencing. Our present for our clients and partners at Cosa Vostra here was actually an NFT. It was a wish. So the wish was, I wish you love. So either you had love or, whatever. It was fun for 2002. So each of them had one wish from Cosa Vostra. It was a wonderful edition, unique edition for each, which is fun. I mean, I don't think it will be worth anything, but still, it could be just worth at some point. Cosa Vostra is growing, and you will have that wish from that agency in 2002 in your portfolio, and it will define you maybe at some point. I
mean, these things, I'm like, I could show you photos on my phone that are ones that I took, my mom sent a photo to my daughter and I took a photo of the photo to just not lose it. Right. So for me now, I love taking photos and, I want to start, minting a few NFTs on Tezos because it's inexpensive.
Yeah.
Dropping them in my daughter's wallets, hopefully the blockchain will outlive us. iCloud won't outlive us. Google Cloud won't outlive us. The blockchains will.
Blockchain will.
And so when you start to look at it from that angle, I think it makes a lot more sense. And when you mentioned the Thrasher shirt, I think it's a great example. I wish I had an NFT of every concert T-shirt I'd ever owned, right? And I could right now show you, look, Bob Dylan, Tom Petty, 1981. And you'd be like, oh wow, you were there. How old were you? I was 9. That's these things are. It's not just about speculation on art. Most of us don't speculate on art, but we all have a driver's license, or we don't all, but we all have a passport, not in America, but you get what I'm saying. In the future, the way that you will have these, the way your driver's license will be in your wallet. I have 2 driver's licenses in my wallet, one American, one French. They are very poor technology.
Yeah.
relative to what I have, on my ledger, which is here.
I still don't have a ledger. I have to get a ledger.
What will happen in the future is I will connect my wallet. The government will issue the document to my wallet. And the way that I prove I am who I say I am is that I will show you that I am the owner of the wallet that contains that document. That's much better technology to achieve the same thing. And that's why it's inevitable.
The thing I want to ask, because you've been also obviously a lot around art, music, and I completely see what NFT will change. Probably also on luxury, because obviously you have, if you had from that skateboard came is Supreme X.
Imagine if that Supreme drop happened as NFTs.
Yeah,
not people lined up in front of stores, but in a purely liquid market, and they all just changed hands. Like moonbirds have done for the past week.
But if I take my watch, I could sell it, but it will worth nothing if I don't have the linked NFT. That would happen. Yeah,
maybe.
But what else? I mean, it's still. I'm trying to think about like creators' economy. People are trying to sell minutes of podcasts, and that gives you rights from. I'm not really completely convinced.
I think it will be everything. There's a big NFT conference coming up called VCon.
Yeah, and
it's sold out, but there's a market for the tickets. They're 0.4 ETH right now. Anyone can go buy one. But just apply that to everything. Okay, I've got tickets to see a band next week, right? Well, why is that not a part of a liquid market, right? I mean, I want to go to the show, but if somebody offered me 700 euros for the tickets, well, I'd probably take it. I could watch it on YouTube.
For example, this works on. I sold tickets from PSG Marseille last week.
Yeah.
It's the big confrontation in France, and I did it without NFT technologies.
Exactly, which is by definition a poorer way of doing it. And that's why it's inevitable. All of these things must move to this technology, because I've sold tickets that way too. There's almost no way to know that. I mean, because I sell those tickets on StubHub or whatever. I could just get to the venue before you because it's just a barcode.
Well, it's sold on the PSG's thing, so it's centralized. It's not decentralized at the end.
Exactly, and decentralization will win in the end.
Plus, something I would definitely be happy also to have is that you say I was at that show. And so I remember being at PSG Marseille in 1999 or something, but I'm not very sure which game was it, what was the score. And it's also a good track record for yourself.
Totally.
What came to my mind, I'm sorry about for the French-speaking people, when you said, I remember being at that concert. I remember being at a concert in Providence, Rhode Island. It was one day after Cypress Hill, which I was like, I so want to go to Cypress Hill, and I didn't go. And I went to Hootie and the Bluefish, which nobody knows. That's why I apologize for, because it's typically American.
But don't people know Darius Rucker?
I don't know.
Because that's Hootie. Hootie is now a country star.
My God.
Talk about reinventing yourself. Hootie reinvented himself as an African-American country star.
Okay.
Big ups to Hootie.
So I saw them and I was like, what the fuck am I doing here? Because it was like,
I saw Rage Against the Machine open for Cypress Hill in Flint, Michigan in 1992. And yes, I wish I had the NFT ticket. Because even for myself, I'm like, that really happened, right? I'm pretty sure Rage opened for Cypress in Flint. I went with my girlfriend at the time. I'm pretty sure, but I would love to have that ticket in my wallet. And tickets used to be amazing. Like search like Bill Graham presents tickets on the internet. You'll find all these incredible things. Like, they used to make beautiful like pieces of art as the tickets. Now it's like this thing you print out from Fnac or Ticketmaster, and it's got a big ad on it. Like you want to like throw it away the moment that you can throw it away, right? There's no collectible in that. That will change. This and I, for me, I like this. It's like you're building communities, and yes, now you can do something for the people who have those things in their wallets. And I think the other thing that'll happen is you'll get this indirection of kind of the media business as well. Think about the media businesses. I mean, first of all, advertising is a crime against humanity, right? Stealing people's attention and selling it to someone else is a crime, should be punished. And, I think NFTs will provide a way around that, which is, I'm trying to reach a community of people. So I go to a media outlet and I buy their attention from that media outlet. I pay an agency, I pay a media company, and all I really wanted to do is to get the attention of these people. What if I took that same money and I just invested in those people in some way?
Yeah.
Because those people are all a part of this community, and I can do something for that community. I'm going to put on a concert. I'm going to take that money that I would have given to the agency and the media outlet, and I'm just going to put on a concert for this community and go, hey guys, Ledger wants to, we want you to know we exist.
Okay,
and we're going to give you some value in return, and we're going to not give the value to those other people.
So I run this podcast. I have sponsors. So I'm a criminal somehow. So what do? I would go to my sponsor Conto, which is I won't take attention, and say, look, buy some NFTs from that season, and what?
Well, I think what you can do is build that community. Mm-hmm. Right. You look at the way that a community like Bankless is built, where they have subscribers. Even the way, it hasn't been done with NFTs, but even the way that Sam Harris has kind of built his business, right? I can listen to half of his podcast if I'm not a subscriber. I have to be a subscriber to listen to the full thing. Being a member gets me certain benefits. The kind of Substack, atmosphere is a way to do this, that's not ad supported. So I think there's both, and I think there's value to both, and the great thing is that the consumers have choice, right? I can choose, I want to listen to Tim Ferriss, and I know that I just need to go to 10 minutes in before when the interview actually starts, or I could be a part of Sam Harris's world if I want to, if I can afford to, and et cetera. That's or maybe consumer choice at the end of the day.
Yeah. I can be okay with sponsorship if it's free, but it's like some TVs before, or Spotify at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, exactly. You have a choice of whether you want to kind of participate in that ecosystem or not.
But what does the NFT afford on top of Substack?
Well, what it does is it actually creates a marketplace out of it. The community becomes, community membership becomes, first of all, provable.
Yeah.
The way that, you're a member of Sam Harris's world is really clumsy and it gets me no benefits in the real world.
I get that. Yeah.
Whereas, my proof membership, gets me early access to the podcast, access to a community on Discord, access to other NFT drops, which are worth real money. So they bring other things in, and that's what I mean is you could then offer value to that community. So let's say you had a community, and instead of doing an ad, someone comes to you and says, "Oh, I'd like to spend $100,000 with you this year." You go, "Okay, cool. We're going to give that value to the community, right?" And here's how we're going to do that. Now, the value of the community, which you're also an owner in, has also gone up. You bring, kind of new and more valuable people into that community, and you're building ownership and building a company in that way. I don't think these have been fully explored yet. I think if you look at what Kevin Rose has done with Proof and Moonbirds, it's incredibly interesting. Like you could just go, it's just another profile pick project. No, he raised tens of millions of dollars last weekend, which he is pouring into building a company. What he really did was he gathered investment for his company from the users of the product as opposed to venture capitalists. You compare that to Facebook.
This is blowing at the moment. Not only on NFTs, but I have example on French companies. You have Snowball, you have Bricks, you have, those guys, they raised like 1 million, or Bricks, I think it was 20 million euros in 20 seconds. It's wow.
And there's definitely a gold rush aspect. Many people will get totally blown out. Yeah. I feel like I'm doing NFTs to learn, because living in the future is cheating. So I feel like, okay, even if I lose my shirt here, I'm going to be smarter, and I'm going to use that, that intelligence in the future. I do feel on some level like, it's like saying, let's take $500,000 to Vegas. I'm sure we're going to learn a lot. So I'm sure I'm going to learn a lot the hard way as well, and I'm okay with that. To come back to the skateboarding analogy, but if you look at what'll come out of this, for sure there will be some big winners. Let's just take a really small example. Are you familiar with Bandcamp? Bandcamp is a great company. They were a competitor to us at Topspin. They are a platform for artists to self-release their records.
Okay.
Great company, great founders. They built the company kind of from 2008 till today. They sold the company to Epic Games a month or so ago. And I'm so happy for them because I love the product and it's great for artists. Now, imagine if what we did was we just said today we're gonna remake Bandcamp, which is now owned by Epic Games, except all of the artists are going to be the owners.
Yeah.
Just it's the same functionality, but instead of, they raised money from venture capitalists who ultimately made money when they sold this thing to Epic Games. The artists have done well on the platform. I mean, I'm sure actually artists, some have done well and some have done pennies. I know artists that are in both categories on Bandcamp. But what if they were actually equity owners in that? And that ownership was liquid. And if I needed to buy a house and my value had gone from $10,000 to $110,000, I could trade that value with someone else and buy a house. That's the kind of difference that we're going to get in this new world. I care about that. I don't care about how much money Peter Thiel has. I do care about, Mike, I'm sorry, MP Cause, who I'm going to interview on the Ledger podcast soon. The artist I was mentioning, if you search MPKOZ, you'll find him.
Okay.
He, did what is the greatest thing you can do as a generative artist, and he had a curated drop on Art Blocks. That's like, the main event. That's headlining Coachella. He made really good money on that. He took 25% of the earnings, which was significant, and he donated them to a hospital in America that was specialized in the kind of cancer that his mom has. That was his art. Selling art as NFTs was transformative, not only for him and his family, but probably for other families, because the money that he's given to the research on this cancer is significant. This is what you get when you taking money into a creative economy is different than taking money into Wall Street. It's different.
Yeah, I completely get that. And it can go, you're talking creative, but into, as you said, communities. Like Cosa Vostra is an agency. So we have developers, we have designers, we have SEO experts and so on. If I'd built that in 2022, I'd probably build a Web3, we call it, Fred told me a DAO, Digital Autonomous Organization. The idea would be to say, look, if you work, we have tokens. If you work with us, you will get tokens. If you buy from us, probably you will get tokens.
Yeah.
If you can be either sometimes freelancers or sometimes in-house. You probably will get more tokens if you get freelancers. I don't know. Yeah, I believe so. I would get a part of the value on some things. I would guarantee things. That is, and the value of the whole company would benefit from everyone who has been at some point working around with us. That would be fantastic.
Totally agree. And I think this is unexplored mostly. And I think that the thing that listeners should do if they're, I think it's very difficult for us to imagine a world that's not like the one that we live in. But we have to remember that this concept of a company is not that old. There's a great book. Chris Dixon always recommends it. That's why I read it. It's called The Company. It's a very short book that's about the creation of the Limited Liability Corporation and what an invention that was. There's another great book.
You know the author, because it's going to be.
I don't know the author, but it's called The Company, like a short history of something of an idea, and it's about the history of the limited liability.
Okay, company. I got it. Adrian Wooldridge.
That sounds right.
A short history of a revolutionary idea.
Exactly. He was a writer for The Economist, maybe an editor for The Economist, actually, who wrote it. And there's another great book. My favorite contemporary author is this guy named John Higgs.
Okay.
He wrote an incredible book called The KLF, The Band That Burned £1 Million. He's just written a biography of William Blake. He wrote a book about the future, but he also wrote kind of a revisionist history of the 20th century. Okay. That's called, I think it's called Stranger Than We Can Imagine, something like that. He also wrote an amazing biography of Timothy Leary, but I just love him as an author. and but one of the things that he really pointed out to me in the book Stranger Than We Can Imagine is that this kind of the way that we created the company in the 20th century, the fact that we gave companies the same rights as people, right? Even though they can't go to jail, they can't really be punished, but we gave them many of the same rights as people, transformed society. And I think to your point about the DAO, I think when you start talking about a DAO and I'm going to give tokens to my clients, people are going to think like, you are crazy, and
this is happening already.
But then I think that's why it's important to look at history and remember that, compulsory education is not that old. The limited liability corporation is not that old. 70,000 years of human history. You're talking about the last 100 or 150 years. Of course, it will change again. And of course, that change will be driven by technology. Of course. But people really have a hard time imagining a world that's different from the one they grew up in.
Couple of questions about okay, let's stick, and then I'll come to Ledger. Two things. I want to dig a bit about Beats and what happened to that time and what was it, because it seems an extraordinary history. But as we were on LVMH, let's just close this chapter. You've spent 5 years there, something like this, yeah. What did you learn? How much impact can you get? Because LVMH is a holding company, right? I mean, and to what I understand, when you're the chief digital officer, you're kind of I was used that word oracle, but I mean, you're not into the brands. So, do you have,
you have you have a wide purview, but no operational control really.
And I mean, do you have? I mean, can you say to some brands you do that, or you can't? Do you offer services? Do you have, what's the job?
You lead through influence much more than directly. And I think look, the thing to remember is that they hired me, right? So they were looking for this change. It's not like I knocked on their door and said, hey, you should really hire me. They were looking. They hired. I am a weird skateboarder from Indiana who has a digital music background, and I really think it speaks to Alexander and Banana Nose. Kind of, there's something they do believe in creativity. Or I think they wouldn't have chosen me. I'm a strange choice, but I think that they appreciated that I had an appreciation for culture and a background that's deeply technical, and that I like solving puzzles. So let's try to solve this puzzle together. So then we had to find, what are the things that we can and should do. The fun thing for me is that it really runs the gamut of kind of being a CEO, because on some days I'm talking about e-commerce, on some days I'm talking about social media, on other days I'm talking about distribution, and even logistics, right? Like, how do we build the infrastructure that that Amazon has that allows them to deliver this incredible experience? So it really covers that entire spectrum of the customer experience. But in the end, you have to focus on something. I think we really, and Tony Belloni, who is the managing director there, is great at, like, let's find the three things that are going to move the needle. Okay. So for us,
it's three things all the time. I mean,
we basically, we really focused on e-commerce, the kind of the omni-channel experience, and then we focused on data, and how do we know more about the luxury customer than anyone on the planet? And so it was really about, like, how do we get our brands into e-commerce in the right way? And that means direct to consumer, but also, we invested in list.com, where I'm still a board observer, and, we built 24S, and we built our relationships with Farfetch, or decided not to, all of those kinds of decisions. But also we really invested heavily in data, and they continue to. One of my biggest points of pride is, really being a mentor and bringing a young woman named Anka Marola, who's now the chief data officer at LVMH, along, and saying, this is important, this is important, this is important, this is important. And actually, I believe this young woman can do this job. And really making that a core tenet. And she's just doing amazing work at LVMH now on the data side with every single brand. to kind of one by one. We started with Dior, and then we would work with Fendi, and then you use data to serve your customers better, and kind of set those rules. And I think that's what I tried to do, is to go, okay, what is the technology capable of? Now, how do we do this in a way that really serves the brands and serves the customers? So data, for example, I mean, what I'd said to Mr. Arnaud and the team a few years ago is, we're not going to do nothing with data, and we're not going to use data in a way that is creepy and offends our customers. Okay, so those are the two ends of the spectrum. Now, the hard part is deciding, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
We have to pick our point on the spectrum. That actually takes thought leadership. We have to decide what is right. What are our guiding principles? And we just decided, if it's good for the customer and it's something that we would tell the customer, we are doing this, then we'll do it. If we wouldn't say to the customer, like Facebook would never say to the customer exactly what they're doing with your customer data many times, then we won't do it. And we'll set these very clear rules. And I think that's what we did. Last week we had it was Paris Blockchain Week, and LVMH hosted a 2-day metaverse seminar, and we had a party on Wednesday night, and I could have cried. I was looking around the room, I cannot believe that this is happening at LVMH, and everyone's here, and people are so excited about it, genuinely excited. So many CEOs of the brands, so many of the e-commerce and chief digital officers, Olivier, and it was excitement about the future.
Any thing you could share for our without giving any secrets, but some things you've done that are amazing about data, or anything that people should do in their commerce, or
I think what we started to do. Actually, I think there's a very practical bit of advice here, because when if you have, let's say you're a brand and you have a commerce business, let's say you're a big brand, you're probably actually in a worse place, because you have a lot of customer data, you don't know what it is, and it's very difficult to get your arms around it.
And you got the law that is complicated.
Well, and you might treat it as a technical problem, where really it's a retail problem.
Okay.
So the failure case would be, the IT team goes away and they make you a data platform and they deliver it to you, and you have no idea what to do with it. What we did was the opposite. We got the retail teams together, and we said, imagine that you have access to everything you might want to know about your customers. What would you do with it? You come up with 25, 30 ideas, you put them all, Post-it notes on the wall, and then the retail team, not the tech team, we say to them, which of the 3 ideas are going to work? Not the ones that are kind of fringe. There's got to be 3 up here that we're yeah, we all look at each other yeah, that's going to work. Now, you go and you implement those.
You go from the métier, how do you call that? Yeah.
And you let the retail teams pull instead of pushing it on them. You let them pull, because, man, if I work retail for a brand and you can help me sell, I want your help, right? And that's what we tried to do. So how do you identify, what a customer might want to buy today? How do you identify which customer might be the one to call about this product? How do you know that bag should sit on that shelf and not that bag?
So it's kind of user experience from the salespeople, right? Could you go further and also ask the client? I mean,
sure, and we do, right? I use this example all the time. I have many friends' birthdays in my calendar, and when I text them today and say happy birthday, they feel great. They don't think I remembered their birthday. They know it's written down in my calendar, right? I mean, I didn't go,
That's why I don't
even know
that's why I don't tell birthdays.
I don't even know what day it is. So I couldn't even, if I did know, I wouldn't know. So actually in my head, I just went, wait, when's my mom's birthday? But no, it's next month. But this is my point. We have these cues, these reminders, but then we do something with that behavior, right? We then use that data to act. And the question is, what do you do? Tony Belloni, at the managing director at LVMH, told me a great story when I started that was transformative for him. They, as luxury, they really thought that, a phone call is much better than, a digital message, text message, email. And he asked one of their VICs once, what could we do better? And the VIC said, don't call me, text me. Telemarketers call me. My friends text me, right? And that was this click for Tony where he went, right, behavior changes and you need to be in people's lives in a very first-class way. And there are not necessarily sacred cows there. You know that when you get a text message that's green versus one that's blue, that it means something different. You know what it means. When somebody contacts you on LinkedIn versus WhatsApp, it means something different, right? And so you really have to understand what those meanings are and behave, as a member of the community.
This one is weird. Typically, I mean, the whole phone versus text, and I mean, I had this talk with the client trying to reach us. Do you have a time you have to go?
I was going to look.
Yeah.
I'm good until I just need to be. I'm doing an interview at 12:30.
Okay, so we have like a half an hour or so.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, cool. It will not be cut actually, and I might go for a coffee in 5 minutes and let you with my. So you'll have to think about what you're going to say.
Okay, cool.
Okay, what I'm saying is that a client of mine said to me yesterday. Yesterday, I called someone on your team. He didn't answer, and he sent me an email back saying, "Can I call you back at that time, or tomorrow at that time?" I said, couldn't he fucking call me back? Just call me back right now. And it's kind of weird how, and I agreed with him actually. I was like, yeah, he should have called you back. But it's weird.
I agree too, actually.
Yeah, but it's so bizarre how it's a question of a generation, I believe. The guy in charge in the company at Cosa Vostra he didn't want to bother the other one because you don't call as before. I mean, it's not. I don't know.
It's also, I think this is something that people forget about communication is that there isn't a right and a wrong way. We communicate to be understood. I really think that there are kind of. I think tradition gets in the way of this. People might look at the way people in an African American community talk, and they say, "Oh, that's not proper English." No, if you speak to be understood, not to speak properly. It's the same thing. So I think it depends on who you're interfacing with, right? If I'm talking with Jimmy Iovine, I'm going to call him. I'm not going to email him. He doesn't. That's not how he does things. If I'm talking with my 15-year-old, I'm going to text her on iMessage. I'm not going to email her. She wouldn't look at her email, and I'm not going to call her. She wouldn't pick up the phone. If I'm talking with my girlfriend, I use WhatsApp because that's what we use between. This is the way communication works.
And this is pretty much linked to what you said earlier on about nation versus networks. I believe because
when in Rome, right?
Yeah.
When in Rome. So when in Rome, you do as the Romans do. When in Discord, you're going to do what the Discord people do. When if I'm in LVMH, I'm gonna do what's appropriate in to communicate in that environment. And this is I've said a couple times that I really don't believe in right and wrong, and I really mean that sincerely. Now that might sound like I'm anti-moralist. I just think it's more about relativity, right? I mean, if my girlfriend says to me, Ian, I prefer that you eat with a knife and a fork and not like a savage American, I'd say, okay, I'm happy to do that for you. If she said to me, the right way to eat, the correct way to eat is with a knife and a fork, I'm going to go through the ceiling, right? Because now you don't understand how culture works. You don't understand. If you think there's a right and a wrong, then you have a fundamental misconception about humanity and no respect for history. And I think that's what we have to consider when we're in all of these realms, right? Is that, we say, oh, kids are playing video games too much. Okay, well, would you rather they watched a lot of TV? I wouldn't. I'd rather my kids play video games than watch television because it's more participatory. But we all have these reference points. We have a very difficult time, understanding that the way that we grew up is not the right way. And I think it's a real,
that's a tough one.
It's a handicap.
Yeah. You've worked, I asked about LVMH and Apple. Two last questions about those. I asked about what you've done there, how. If I would ask you one thing, or three, I don't know, but you've learned in each of these companies, which are mega companies worldwide, is there something that strikes you at Apple for 1 year, at LVMH for 5 years, that are different from any other company that I could get inspiration from?
You know, it's interesting because I really took a lot from Jimmy Iovine. I took probably more from working with Jimmy Iovine than I did from working at Apple. Apple was a great company, to work with. I was only there a year, and I worked so closely with Jimmy Iovine that I got many more life lessons from him. And I think that, I want to just talk about Jimmy for 1 second because he's, if you haven't watched the Defiant ones, please do. I'll be honest, I haven't watched it.
Okay.
I watched the first one, but I lived it. I didn't need to watch it. But Jimmy is somebody who he collects people who he thinks have amazing promise, and he pushes them to do things that they didn't know they could do. And he started working with John Lennon. He did that thing I just described with people like Bruce Springsteen and Tom Petty and Lady Gaga and Dr. Dre and Eminem and Pharrell Williams and me, lucky for me, again, to come back to the mentor side of things. But even at age 60, nobody works as hard as Jimmy Iovine. I think he's trying to take more of a break now. But really, while we were doing beats, he was my first call at 7 a.m. and my last call at 11 p.m. every day. And he's motivated by the before and after of moving culture. Jimmy said to me once, I asked him directly, why do you work so damn hard? And he said, because once you've moved culture, it's like a high that you always want to get back. There was a before Eminem and an after Eminem, and we did that. And he just had this vision, and he was relentless. It was a huge lesson because it's that thing. You push yourself to limits that you didn't know you could push yourself to, and then you have these incredible outcomes, and it feels like Michael Jordan winning the whole thing, right? And I think at Apple there was a really interesting lesson that I use today, which is Apple is incredibly good at focus. When I was at Yahoo, they were not good at focus, right? Mm-hmm. It was a lot of smart people, and every idea was kind of entertained. Like, yeah, let's try it, And I think what you ended up with was a culture that was kind of about creating products, not about creating business. Okay. Which was, sort of a Web 2 experiment, I would say. And many people had success with that through those years. So that's why they felt like they had to do it. But at Apple, it's kind of the opposite. They're really good at saying no to very good ideas, which is quite hard to do, actually. When you've got, tens of thousands of brilliant people and they come up with brilliant ideas, it's very hard to keep them focused. Now, they have a magic trick that they do that with, and that is those 2 events that they do every year. And that's the way that they do it. We came into the company as Beats Music in August, and Eddie Q walks into the room with the engineering team and our leadership and everyone. And I was new to the company, so I didn't have any idea what to expect. And he said, "Okay, well, we're going to announce Apple Music on stage in June." And the engineering team said, "Eddie, that's not possible. Like, come on, man. Like, no, we're not. Like, that's crazy." And he said, "Yeah, Tim's going to announce it, so you guys need to figure it out." And he walked out of the room. And we launched the product in June. We were like 3 weeks late, I think. But and you realize that, every colleague you would meet in the company knew if and when what they're working on was going to be on that stage. Mm. And if it wasn't big enough for Tim Cook to talk about it on that stage, they simply don't do it. And that level of focus, this is something I try to do at Ledger. You'll notice that Ledger will have two events with Ledger Open twice a year, and that we really kind of try to focus everyone on those moments. And you clear hurdles that you didn't think you were going to be able to clear. At Ledger, we were able to announce partnerships with Coinbase, FTX, a new product, an NFT platform, all last December, and that was a real challenge for the team to get all of those things going. We've got we'll do the Ledger Open again in June, and we've got a big slate of announcements, and everyone in the company is focused on the things that we will announce on that day. So that was a big magic trick that I learned at Apple. And there's two things there. One is the insane focus. The other is kind of this magic trick that's very simple. It's very practical. We have our own event. We don't go to CES. We don't go to other people's conferences. We do our own thing. And we really focus on what are we going to tell our fans about on that stage on that day. And that's a great way, just a very simple way to keep everyone focused and to reward everyone.
And everybody can do this. I mean, you just have to come out with the event, and even if there is 3 people at the event, or I mean, it's just a commitment, right?
Exactly, it's committing. And committing to a date and saying, "I'm going to do this, hell or high water." And I think it's necessary. I'm sure everyone's found that when you're just going to get it done when it's done, it can wait till tomorrow. But if I know that, oh no, I've got to hit that date, I've got to work backward from that. There are lots of nights you have to stay up all night and work to get it done.
Anything from LVMH?
Yeah, I think like I said, from LVMH, what I love is that you can take this investment thesis of backing creativity with operational efficiency, and build around it. And I think that's a great that's a great focal point. Now, there's a lot of complexity that comes below that, but everything is kind of in service of that, right? What that also gives them the ability to do is to invest heavily in creativity. There are plenty of people who think that LVMH, what LVMH spends to create a store designed by Peter Marino is an insane cost, or what they pay that designer is insane relative to the P&L of the brand. But in fact, that is the magic trick.
They get the best brains.
We invest in creativity. The other thing is, I think that if you look, they are unafraid to push forward in culture. Right. I mean, bringing in people, like Matt Williams, like Virgil Abloh, like Nigo, like Yoon from Ambush is very different than a John Galliano or a Hedi Slimane, and they know how to do both, and they're not afraid. And in fact, if you look at like the LVMH Prize, which is all about getting to know young designers, they've actually created a pipeline of young creative talent that helps them, that pushes them. And I think if you look at, the way that Alexander Arnault has, kind of pushed culture with Rimowa by doing collaborations with Supreme and Antisocial Social Club and et cetera. If you look at, him making a Tiffany piece out of his CryptoPunk 2 weeks ago, they're unafraid, to push into that. I mean, the Tiffany gold coin on April 1st was genius, and truly genius, like not a Me Too, like we understand this culture and we're going to do our own thing relative to it in the moment. So, which is amazing. It doesn't fall flat. And so I just think that but to do that, you have to live it. You absolutely have to live it. You can't do it by, working in an office and, watching television. You have to be a part of these cultures.
So what are you going to change? How are you going to change the world with Ledger? What are you doing there? Do you need to work? Financially?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends on what lifestyle I want to lead, but to live the lifestyle I still need a paycheck.
Okay.
I have an alimony. At Ledger, so what Ledger does, for those who don't know, is we make hardware wallets for cryptocurrency that connect to the world of Web3, which includes cryptocurrencies as well as NFTs and anything else that comes in Web3. There's, I think to zoom out and really get the picture here, again, we have this new human invention, digital scarcity. With that comes a new freedom of self-custody. So I can actually hold all of my wealth in my hand on this magic device. It's like a safe where I can put gold bars, and if you threaten me, I can make this safe disappear, right? I could actually forget this wallet on this desk today, and it doesn't matter because I have a recovery phrase that will bring all of my wealth back, and you can't open my safe because you're not me.
And if I put your gun on your face,
then I will put the passcode into this device 3 times wrong, and it will just turn into a brick.
Okay.
And unlike my watch or my Lamborghini, which I don't actually have a Lamborghini, but my proverbial Lamborghini, I don't actually have a car, let alone a Lamborghini. This is valueless to you if I'm dead.
Yeah.
Right. So it is actually a kind of a security and threat model that we aren't used to. It truly is magic. Yeah, I know there's true magic going on here. But also what that means is I have a lot of wealth which is completely outside of nation states. Completely. It's not in an institution which is regulated by nation states. It's not backed by a nation state currency. It is not fiat money, which is backed by a war machine. Yeah. It is completely outside of that universe. And I have the custody. I hold it in my hand. And I think that is a fundamental thing that people do not fully appreciate what that means. Now, this NFT thing is actually pushing people into that world because, if I just own some Bitcoin or own some Ethereum or own some Dogecoin, maybe I just own an index to that on Robinhood, or, maybe I have got some kind of centralized access to that on my Coinbase account or whatever. But that's not the case with NFTs. NFTs are self-custody, meaning you hold those items in your hand the same way you have that photograph and it hangs on your wall. And so with this kind of new freedom, and I do believe it's a freedom of self-custody, you have a new responsibility, which is security. If I'm the bank, how am I securing my wealth? And these Web 2 devices, our phones and our computers, cannot secure that wealth. And the best way to understand that is, it's like if I asked you to protect a building full of gold bars and you set off on your security mission. And then I said, oh, by the way, I'm going to put a shopping mall and a nightclub on the ground floor of that building. And you'd be like, wait,
no.
Can't we just protect the gold bars? That's what your phone's trying to do, right? My daughter's going to play, Animal Crossing on this device, and it's going to protect, wealth. It's not reality. Those two things don't go together. I mean, Chrome has had 3 crucial updates in the past 3 weeks, right? Because doing everything is different than protecting wealth. Right. So that's why we have this kind of unbundled moment where I have a Web 3 device and I have a Web 2 device, and I use them together. Now,
so it's probably one of the first mainstream Web 3 device.
Yeah, exactly. It is, to me, it's the iPod of Web 3, and that it'll become even more so as the year progresses. But I think the way to think about it is this is the center of gravity for the future of your online life. So if you can make the leap with me that we do live online lives, right? We live part of our lives online. That world will have its own economy.
Large chunk right under its studio.
That world will have its own economy, but we will also have our own stuff, and that stuff might be your identification, right? I work for this company. Let me prove it to you. I hold this passport. Let me prove it to you. I have a driver's license. Let me prove it to you. I have tickets to that football game. Let me prove it to you. That will all be digital stuff, digital belongings. And you will bring those belongings with you to that world. So in that way, Ledger is the center of gravity in that future world, because it's the way you hold your stuff and your identity. Because your again, the tickets to that football game, your driver's license, and the proof that you owned that Thrasher t-shirt in, 2022 all live in that device, and they show kind of who you are. And when you enter that world, your stuff, can appear in that world.
So the idea is that you get on your Ledger device access to all of those portfolios. Can be a MetaMask, can be some other Yoroi, whatever it is, depending now on different cryptos, right? NFTs and so on. And you get the codes, the how do you call them?
The keys.
The keys, yeah. On a paper at the bank or something like this. I mean,
correct.
That's the best way to use it, right?
Correct. The best way to describe it to someone who's maybe just trying to get their head around how this technology works is, when you have value, your value is actually protected by the blockchain.
Yeah.
So if, let's say, you own some Bitcoin, what you really do is the Bitcoin blockchain is just a distributed ledger of transactions. So it basically says this Bitcoin or fraction of a Bitcoin is owned by AAAA. This fraction of the Bitcoin is owned by BBBBB. And so now what your ledger device actually does is it allows you to say, I am AAAA, right? And so now when you want to do something with that value, like let's say you're BBBB and I want to send it to you, I say, hey, I am AAAA. I would like to transfer X value to BBBB. I'm going to sign that transaction. The record of that transaction now goes onto the blockchain,
yep.
And it shows that value is now owned by BBBB. And you, as the owner of that, can say, I am BBBB, and I want to either spend it or do something else with it. And that's how it works. So what you really have is, if you think about the security model, then what you need to do is you have to protect your private keys, because if somebody steals them, then they just pretend they're you. And also, at the moment that you sign that transaction, you have to know what it is you're signing. And that gets even more complicated in the Ethereum ecosystem, because Ethereum ecosystem allows for something called smart contracts. And that's literally what they are. It's computer code that is contractual, and you sign that contract as the owner of that. So if you own an NFT, what you really have is that value is assigned to you with a smart contract. And now if I want to assign that value to someone else, I sign a contract that says I'm assigning that value to someone else. So it's just like reading a contract. You have to be able to read it and go, yes, I understand what this contract says, because once I click sign, I will then be bound by it. And I need to look at, what does the contract say, and do I believe it? Now, this is the problem, is you cannot trust your phone. Your phone might lie to you, right? It is possible for an attacker to put a message on your phone that looks good, but isn't really what's happening underneath. And so that's what the ledger device does fundamentally, is it protects your private keys, and what you see is what you sign. So there's a little screen on the device, and when you're signing a transaction, then you look at it and you go, is it what I think it is? Well, okay, yeah, it is. Okay, cool. I'm going to sign it.
The difference is that the phone you can do the transaction. It's autonomous. I mean, you can do it. You cannot pay with your ledger from a ledger to a ledger, can you?
Correct. What you do is you initiate the transaction on your phone or on your computer, and then you sign the transaction with your ledger.
Okay. Great. I had a link to buy ledgers from your team. You don't know, but because I recorded with Eric Larchevêque and Jean-Michel. I said I want a way to offer ledgers. I mean, to sell ledgers to my audience with the discount. I didn't get the discount yet. I believe I probably have something for me, but not for my listeners. I couldn't, but I'll try again to get something.
I come from luxury. I don't believe in discounts.
Yeah. So, well, use my link at the end. At least I will get things.
Well, and to come back, I think this is the future, where what we want to do is to have communities be able to, let their communities buy ledgers. Then we take that affiliate fee, and we take the affiliate fee back into the community, right? Because
the economic model is not of ledger. I mean, is not only selling devices, is it?
No, it's not. We have an enterprise division, which is for banks, governments, brands, NFT projects, anyone who needs enterprise grade security and has a team.
Okay.
Right. You're not an individual. So you need a team, you need governance, like the people in my company can spend up to X, the CFO can spend up to Y, and above Z, you need 3 signatures, right? So that's the enterprise product. And then we also have, if you please do buy a ledger, thank you. It actually, I'm lucky because I don't try to sell Coke instead of Pepsi, right? It's actually the best product in the market, so I don't feel guilty saying that. But if you could start your crypto journey with Ledger, you buy a Ledger, you buy your first crypto through Ledger. If you want to trade, you trade through Ledger. We have NFT projects, coming. You can do that all within the ecosystem of Ledger. So yeah, we have, just like Apple does, we have a hardware business, and we also have transactions and services businesses, just like Apple does. And that's why Pascal gave me the title of Chief Experience Officer, because when you buy an iPhone, you're not really buying a piece of hardware. You're buying into the Apple ecosystem.
Sure, of course, yeah.
You're buying into the Apple experience, and that's what we'd like to build with Ledger, because it's early days. I mean, we are in those 56K modem days. We are in the days when it's difficult to stream music and video online. But with Web3, 10 years from now, the consumer experience will be completely different, and our task is to really try to move that forward and make it more palatable.
I can't wait. Great. I'll let you go pretty soon. Let me ask you a couple of questions before that. I didn't get the time for a coffee, but I'll do that later on.
And I've drank everything.
Where can we follow you? Actually, I think I asked you as a connection on LinkedIn, but you don't accept.
I don't really use LinkedIn that much.
Okay. So it's Twitter.
I'm on
Instagram?
Twitter. I'm on Twitter. I've deleted everything. I feel like I'm on Twitter. It's the one place I still am. I don't follow anyone, but I have been posting mostly about NFT stuff. I wasn't posting anything for years. I was early on Twitter, and I wasn't. I was using Instagram for a while. I deleted my Facebook account years ago, and I deleted my Instagram account maybe a year and a half ago.
Okay.
What's
that?
What's that?
Why? Well,
I feel like we have a. I'll tell you a story, an LVMH story. We were in one of these big strategic planning meetings. Mr. Arnaud's in the meeting. Some LVMH brand is in the meeting, and I would leave my phone at my desk when I would go to those meetings, because I know myself, right? And I want to pay attention, so I can't have my phone near me if I want to pay attention. So before the meeting starts, everyone's on their phones, and including Mr. Arnaud. And Tony says, I just want everyone to notice that the only person in this room not on their phone is Ian, is our chief digital officer. And what I said to Tony was, I said, look, I was one of the first people on the internet, and I intend to be one of the first people off. And he said, always a pioneer. And I feel like we're all struggling with our relationship with these services. And for me, it's also part experimentation. When I deleted my Facebook account, I felt a massive load off my shoulders in a way. I didn't miss it. I felt like I felt like I did when I sold my television in 1989. I felt instantly smarter. Same thing when I deleted my Instagram account. To erase that, that distraction from my life felt amazing. And it's also why I don't follow anyone on Twitter. I keep some lists that are very focused, like one about NFTs, one about crypto, one about people I find inspiring. But to be honest, I don't even look at them that often. I get a lot more pleasure out of reading a book, frankly. And so I feel like, I think the one thing that we have to do is we have to be thoughtful about how we spend our time. Whenever I'm talking to a group of young people, I tell them this thing that I wish I would have learned earlier, which is you are what you do. You have to do what you want to be. And we are the sum of how we spend our time.
And what I'm saying also a lot at the moment is that you have to choose. If at least you stay on Instagram, please choose who you're following. Totally. Just don't follow things. It's easy. It's just one click. Yeah, it's easy, but it will take your attention for years probably. So just don't follow shit, because you'll put shit into your brain, right?
I remember whenever people would tell me like, oh, Instagram's garbage. I'm like, well, wait, okay, unfollow everyone. Now follow only National Geographic. Okay, Instagram's amazing.
Yeah.
All right, so now only follow people that are at the quality of National Geographic, and you're going to be great.
I do that quite a lot. I unfollow everyone, and then I start to follow again people. People get mad at me for that, though, because when you unfollow them, and then you ask for friends, some of them back again, they're like, wait, what?
Well, I think if you might be able to find them still. I've written 2 articles, or little blog posts. One was why I unfollowed you on Twitter. That was a very long time ago. Another one was, I think, why I unfollowed you on Instagram, because I had to do that, like, don't take it personal thing. Even, our CEO Pascal's like, dude, you don't even follow me on Twitter. I'm like, I don't follow anyone. I follow Ledger, and that's it. And occasionally I'm like following a random NFT project because to get into the pre-mint, I've got to follow someone on Twitter. It's really the only thing I do. But I think that, just this, the thing that yes, choose who you follow on Instagram, but choose how you spend every minute of your day. Like if what you want to be good at is watching Netflix, then you should watch a lot of Netflix. But what I don't like is when people are like, "Oh, I don't understand how you find the time to whatever." I'm like, well, how do you find the time to run? How do you find the time to pay attention to all this NFT shit? How do you find the time to read those books? Well, I just choose. What I don't do is I don't watch Netflix. I don't do small talk. I don't go to stupid parties. I don't, I just think it's like, and to me, it's not about a judgment. I don't mind what other people do. What I mind is when someone is a victim of inertia, as opposed to taking control of their life and saying, today I'm going to spend my time investing in what I want to be.
100%. Yeah.
We don't have a choice. I had this realization, it comes from, feeling like a failure as a parent sometimes. But I had this realization that, we can't change much about who we are. We can't change a lot about who people think we are. I can't change your mind, what you think about me necessarily. What we can do is we can imagine who is it that we want to be. And then we can say, what did I do today to be that person? And I think that is that's where power comes from, and self-realization, self-actualization is somewhere in there.
Great. Do you share a portfolio? Can we see a crypto or art, or like Jean-Michel Paillon? He shared a few with me.
Yeah, if you go to gallery.so/IANCR, that's my Ethereum collection.
Okay.
In terms of art, it's not the whole collection, but I kind of curate there things that I like. And then I do have a collection on Tezos, but it's harder to find. IANCR.TEZ, which there's more stuff there. It's like I love Tezos and that's what I'd recommend if people want to try things out. There you go.
Yeah, okay. I get that. The first one. Yeah, Tezos is where you can start.
Fun. Tezos is indie rock. It's fun. Yeah. I had the most fun interaction yesterday. There's an artist on there called Pretty Bad, and I finally managed to win one of his auctions yesterday. And then, you're like I'm going back and forth on Twitter with the artist, and he's from the Midwest in America. I'm going back and forth with one of his fans, like me, who wants to buy my piece, and I say no way, and it was fun. It's like it's really, really, really great, and that's the thing, that I think I completely agree with you when you tell people just try it out, because if what you're looking at is you're looking at some story in the Wall Street Journal about CryptoPunks and Bored Apes, then you don't get it. You're not going to understand it.
Plus they have so much biases. I mean, they just think it's bullshit and it's crap. And
but when
just look at what you said, gallery.so/IANCR. And when I look at these, I mean, because I'm more or less of the same culture, even though I was born here. I mean, those things. They tell me something, right?
Absolutely.
I like those.
I learn a lot about me, and by looking at this, and you see hip hop. You see.
You have to go, so I'll have to let you go. Sorry. One last question. If you had the chance to meet that I have two questions. If you had the chance to meet that young Ian, that was about to get a child at 17. And you could tell him something, what would you tell him?
I'd tell him to trust his instincts. I think it took me a while to actually trust my instincts. I did at many points, but kind of reluctantly. It's so hard to say because there's so much circumstance in life. So many ways when you could have turned left instead of right, and it's not quite clear why you did or didn't. And I've certainly made my share of mistakes. I have two lovely daughters and two lovely ex-wives, and I'm paxed with an amazing woman here in France, and we have
such a French brother,
and we have a 7-year-old in our house who's amazing, and but to me, like all of these are part of, kind of life story. And I mean, anything I've learned the hard way. And, so I don't know. I think it's hard to say because, even the fail, you learn more from the failures than from the successes. So you don't really want to tell yourself to avoid the failures because they teach you so much. So I think I would just say, trust your instinct and just keep going.
And the very last one book, you gave me a lot of books, but if you had one book to give to everyone today.
Well, I mean, I think that, there are a few books that it's so hard to choose one. I'll tell you a couple different things. One, my very personal favorite book of all time is called Please Kill Me. It's by Legs McNeil, and it's the oral history of punk rock. And punk rock is one of those things that I think you can't tell the story with commentary. It can only be because how do you capture the irreverence? Right? You can't look at it analytically.
And you can find it in French. Please Kill Me, l'histoire non censurée du punk par ses acteurs. Yeah. Okay.
It's a great book. Now, in terms of importance, I think everyone should read the book. There's two books I think I would name that everyone should read. One came out last year. It's called This Is How They Tell Me the World Ends by Nicole Perlroth, who is the cybercrime reporter for the New York Times. And it gives you an accurate picture of where we are from a, kind of international security relative to cybersecurity perspective. And it's quite scary. And it's below the surface for most people, but I think that there are things that are in this book that if you read the book, you won't be surprised. I think the future might be very surprising to you if you don't read this book, because things will happen and you won't understand how we got here. But this book will set you up for that.
Okay.
I also think that one of the greatest books I've ever read is The Emperor of All Maladies, which is written by a doctor. His name is Siddhartha Moore. I can't say it. But we all have cancer in our lives in some way. And I only wish I would have read it sooner. When my daughter was studying cancer in college, when Adam Yauch from the Beastie Boys passed away of cancer, I would have had a much more nuanced view of, cancer, which we're all going to face, whether it's personally or through friends or loved ones. So I think that because we all have cancer in our lives, it's such a fantastic book. And there's a sequel to that book called The Gene, which is also a must read.
Okay, I got those. Yeah, and it was a great moment talking to you, talking skateboard, talking creativity, those books. How long do you read per day? Like an hour?
Not enough. I mean, probably only 30 minutes, really. It takes me a while to chip away through these books. I'm reading the latest Ray Dalio book right now, and I've been reading it for 2 months, and I'm only halfway through because I'm busy and I'm addicted to NFTs, and
I want to go back to an hour a day.
Me too.
I've left reading too much the past year, and it's terrible. Okay,
trading television for music, trading the internet for reading. These are easy wins in life. Yeah, easy wins.
It's true. I'll do some of it. Netflix sometimes. I mean, I don't watch shit. I drop a lot of. I mean, I've dropped probably the 5-6 series I've been watching, the last one. So I kind of stopped. I didn't cut it, but I stopped. But because I thought I don't want to spend time with those guys,
Yeah.
But sometimes it's so cool. I mean, I don't know. Probably you see the Michael Jordan documentary.
I watched it all in one flight to Los Angeles. Yeah. It was amazing. I think there are many things that I would like. But it's interesting. It's really interesting because I haven't watched really anything. I've never watched a series. I've never seen Seinfeld. I've never seen anything on Netflix. But and I've tried. But what's interesting is, it's like I haven't done it in so long that I don't have a taste for it. Like I find it kind of jarring.
But it's a new culture also. I mean, it's
totally. And it's just, again, there's only so many hours in the day. And for me, it's just not I think there are things that if I was a part of it, I wouldn't. It's like sports. I don't watch any sports, and I'm not upset about sports. It's just a time that I don't have and I don't want to spend. There's other things I want to focus on. And there's only so many hours in the day. So choose wisely. Yeah.
Jan Rogers, it was great meeting you. It was a cool moment with you.
Thank you. I'm sorry that it took so damn long. I'm sorry to you and your listeners. Hopefully they're listening to this at like 2x speed or something.
Yeah, some of them. It takes, recently we had the longest episode with the David Laroche. It's 1 hour longer, so it's okay. It's fine. We take time.
Edit liberally. Cut.
No, I don't cut. That's what I it's also the new world. I believe I don't want to be the one cutting, thinking Jan was interesting at this time, but not that time. I want people to make it. If you want to cut it, folks, please do.
This was a business I wanted to start where we take all movies and make them 90 minutes.
Yeah.
So someone should start. So one of your community managers could cut all of your podcasts down to 45 minutes.
Yeah. One of my free community managers.
Exactly.
Exactly. Please do that.
Yeah.
I'll be happy to put them online and give you a share, an NFT of a 10-15% share out of them.
Perfect.
Yeah. Cool, Jan. That was great. I hope I'll get the chance to meet you again. And let's talk about Tony Fadel.
It's a great idea.
Yeah.
You should have Tony. It's a perfect time because his book's coming out soon.
All right. Talk to you next week, folks. It was a great one to talk in English. I believe it was okay. I was a bit stressed, I have to tell you, but you understood what I said.
Absolutely.
So,
Hopefully you understood what I said.
Yeah, I did. I didn't. A couple of words that came back, which is, I'll tell you, I won't find it right now, but allez, bye. Salut les amis. It was great.
Ciao.
Ciao. Hey, well done. You've listened to this episode of Génération Do It Yourself all the way through. Please share it with people around you and force your friends to subscribe to the podcast on their smartphone. Give it also a 5-star rating and a nice comment on Apple Podcast. That would help me to stand out of the crowd. Finally, don't forget that if you need a tech and creative support, the whole Cosa Vostra team will pamper you as it should be if you write us on jdiy@cosavostra.com. I am Matthieu Stefani. Bisous.